Han Sen touched his forehead and felt nothing. It was smooth and free from wrinkles, like usual. But Zhou Yumei's face did not look like she was telling him a lie. Han Sen pulled out a mirror from his pack, the one that was used for the beetle night, and had a look. Han Sen's face dropped. On his forehead, between his eyebrows, there was a single red dot. He tried to rub it away, but it was as if it had been branded. No matter how much he scrubbed, it wouldn't go away. Han Sen took a closer look. The red dot was on the surface of his skin, but it was as stubborn as if it was embedded within. Removing it any time soon didn't seem likely. Quickly, Han Sen ran his Dongxian Sutra to see if there was anything wrong with his body. To his relief, there were no problems and everything seemed to be normal. Then what is this exactly? Han Sen then thought about the spirit that had stepped from beyond that metal door and the things it had said. As soon as his mind reflected upon those events, an uneasy feeling began to swell. But he wasn't too worried yet. The spirit could have killed him if it wanted to, so it was clear he wasn't on the chopping block yet. But it upset Han Sen to know that he had received a seemingly permanent mark upon his forehead. If I am guessing this correctly, that spirit must have come from the third shelter. The holy rhino must have been taken there. But why would he stop to place a mark on me? Han Sen frowned, unable to figure out what had happened. Right now, Han Sen wanted to be gone from the Black Desert once and for all. He was burning with inquisitiveness, so he wanted to return to civilization and get to asking about the third shelter. He wouldn't be able to learn a single thing from his current location. Han Sen had not previously been in a hurry to learn about the third shelter since he had no immediate connection to the place, and it would be a while before he went there. But now things were different. A scorching desire had taken root in his heart. He wanted to know what the secret of third shelter looked like. For miles around him, as far as his eyes could see, there was only a sweltering desert. There was not a single shelter to be found. He couldn't do anything from where he was right now, so all he could do was stick to what he had been doing so far. Half a day later, the fairy caught up with them and flew around Han Sen with a look of excitement. He didn't pay her much heed, however. He remained seated on the golden roar and played with the rhino's crystallized tear. He cast his Dongxian Sutra to see if he could absorb it. But the Dongxian Sutra did not work as expected, despite his simulation of the rhino's energy flow. There was a different reaction. The tear in his hand melted into a holy water of sorts, which soaked into his body. As curious as this was, he did not receive a geno increase announcement. This disappointed him. But the tear was like a holy light that cleansed his every cell. His skin began to peel, as dirt rose to the surface and was thrown away. After this process began, Han Sen could peel large films of his skin away. It was as if he was shedding, and every time he removed some of his old, now dead skin, more dirt would appear and be cleansed away. After doing this 4 times, his body was put at great ease and a comfort he never knew existed. Now he felt as if he had previously suffered a flu and a wretchedly stuffed nose to go along with it. But now, he had fully healed. His nose was clear, and he could breathe unlike ever before. This really is some good stuff. Han Sen was surprised, feeling as if his body had just been reborn. The tear's effectiveness was incredible. This was the tear that fell from the rhino's eyes while it was evolving. It possessed a nirvanic power, and through this energy he had absorbed from the rhino's teardrop, he felt reborn. Even if he took the fruit of the cactus and ate it, he thought the tear he had received was a far greater item. Although this holy tear of nirvana did not increase Han Sen's gene number, it strengthened them. The quality of genes always exceeded the quantity. His existential tear might not have risen, but such a task was something that would take a long time to do. It was something Han Sen was prepared for, anyway. Han Sen's dirt and old skin continued to peel, and his body performed this cycle 10 times before stopping. This did not take place over the course of 1 day, however. But after he was finished, his body was heavy. Everything in his vision blurred, and his prior ease of breathing became a struggle. He felt as if the atmosphere had been consumed by smog or dust. Han Sen was surprised. It felt like when he became an evolver, and he was staying in the first shelter. It was that sort of feeling, but not quite as strong. Luckily, my body hasn't evolved enough to be excluded from the second shelter. If it did, That would be terrible. If I was excluded, I would have to become a surpasser before reaching the third shelter. Han Sen sighed, and then continued to think, sometimes, I cannot just randomly eat whatever I desire. This tear is far beyond what I expected. It is too powerful. It exceeds what is normally offered by super creatures. Although his fitness did not increase, his first gene lock was blown wide open, and that came as a shock. Although he hadn't reached a fitness of 300 and become a celestial being, he could already unleash his true power. This made him exuberantly happy. It was a shame Zhou Yumei was with him, because he fancied giving his new powers a spin. Good men always receive good rewards. Han Sen could not stop repeating this phrase to himself. If others knew what he was thinking, he'd be viewed with disdain. The truth was, he had never done nor thought of performing a good deed. Han Sen continued riding through the sweltering badlands of the Black Desert in boredom. Seeking to occupy his mind, he decided to research the white rhino's energy flow a bit more. The rhino was incredibly strong, so its energy flow couldn't have been that bad. Therefore, Han Sen wanted to try it. Han Sen then found out that the holy light did not lend itself to any act of aggression. The holy light could heal wounds and provide impressive remedial effects, but it couldn't be used for attacks. Small wounds could be immediately healed by the light, but the overall, future effectiveness would depend on the individual's level. He didn't have enough fitness right now, and his energy was nowhere near as impressive as the rhino's. As such, any holy light he simulated would not be as strong. Still, this satisfied Han Senator living in this world was unpredictable, and things could change in a heartbeat. If there was ever a crisis, and medical aid was needed but could not be found, this skill would prove incredibly valuable. After walking for a dozen days, his eyes met with the sight of the Gobi Desert and a nearby mountain. This made Han Sen and Zhou Yumei incredibly happy, for they had now, at long last, exited the Black Desert. Han Sen quickened their pace in desire for a shelter. He wanted to return to the Alliance and find out all he could about the third shelter. Han Sen and Zhou Yumei began crossing the mountain, and not long after, they stumbled across another human. Zhou Yumei almost leapt for joy. "Bad guy. You can't threaten me anymore," Zhou Yumei said to Han Sen in a mocking tone, after asking the fellow if there were any shelters around. She then bounced up and down in childish glee. "Once we arrive, prepare the sum of money you owe me. I have the stack of IOUs here, sealed and signed. Don't even think about trying to duck and dodge your way out of paying me," Han Sen coldly said. Zhou Yumei stuck out her tongue at Han Sen and turned in a huff to walk in the direction of the shelter. "You're just walking off like that?"
Han Sen stopped Zhou Yumei.
"Well, what else can I do?" Zhou Yumei asked, with apparent confusion. "You can go, but if you keep Little Orange in a shelter, aren't you afraid of others seeking to kill him?"
Han Sen sighed.
"What is there for me to worry about? Even I know nothing can compete with Little Orange," Zhou Yumei said, as she proudly patted Little Orange's head. "You're suggesting you will allow Little Orange to go around murdering people in the shelter?"
Han Sen asked.
Zhou Yumei frowned and said, "Well, what else am I supposed to do? I can establish a camp here, and you can allow Little Orange to remain." Han Sen retrieved his tent from the pack's lining golden growler and erected it. After setting it up, Han Sen told Little Orange, the Silver Fox, and the Little Fairy to stay inside. All those who could not be teleported would remain. Then he summoned Steel Prince and commanded that he stay behind to guard the camp, as well. If anyone drew near, the Steel Prince could parley with them to prevent their approach. If people would not heed what the spirit told them, what happened next was not something Han Sen could be held accountable for. If someone had a death wish, then that was on them. After setting up everything, Han Sen led Zhou Yumei to the human shelter. It was only a small night shelter of little renown, but they were told that a few hundred miles past it rested another shelter that was grand in size. That one was a royal shelter. It undoubtedly served as a hub for countless other humans. Han Sen and Zhou Yumei were in a rush to get there. Without stopping anyone else for information, they journeyed to the shelter as quickly as they could, so they could teleport back to the Alliance. When he returned, Han Sen called Ji Yi and ran to inform her that he had been safe in his absence. They talked for a while, and during their discussion, Han Sen made sure to ask about the third god's sanctuary. Wait for me in your room. I'll bring Annie along with me. This is not an appropriate subject to be discussed on a communicator. Ji Yinran then hung up. Not long after, Ji Yinran visited Han Sen's room with Annie in tow. After Han Sen greeted them at the entry and had them take a seat, Ji Yinran turned to speak to Annie. Annie, tell Han Sen about the situation in the third god's sanctuary. Annie looked at Han Sen and with a muddled expression, said, the reason why the Alliance prevents surpassers from discussing the third god's sanctuary is because we are the lowest tier of the third god's sanctuary inhabitants. The real masters of the third god's sanctuary are spirits, and they rule the place. No way. Shouldn't there be 1,000,000 human surpassers living there? Han Sen was shocked at this revelation. There are 1,000,000, yes, but they are lost and scattered across the third god's sanctuary. Encountering another human is rare, and you'd be fortunate to encounter just one in a journey that spans the distance between 10 shelters. If you ascended to enter the third god's sanctuary and ended up arriving at a human shelter, it would be like winning the lottery. Annie explained the situation emotionlessly. That's pretty grim, Han Sen said with a wry smile. Annie suddenly gave a complicated smile and said, Grim? You think that's grim? That's not the half of it. When humans enter the third god's sanctuary, they are all sent to a shelter. If they don't end up at a human shelter, you know where they end up, don't you? Spirit shelters? How is that possible? Han Sen's eyes opened wide, unable to comprehend what such a scene might look like. In the third god's sanctuary, even ordinary creatures could be celestial beings, and even the lowest tier of spirit shelters would be packed to the gills with spirits and creatures. Any human who arrived in the third god's sanctuary to be greeted by such horror would be doomed. It would be impossible for them to resist such power. No wonder so many people choose not to move to the third god's sanctuary, then. Going there sounds very much like a death sentence. The 1,000,000 evolvers surviving there must be fiercely strong. Han Sen had a wry smile. Strong? Again, I must tell you that you are wrong. They bring shame to the human race, Annie coldly said. Why? What is the issue? Han Sen was too lazy to think about what she was implying, so he asked her to spell it all out. Eking out a living for yourself in the third god's sanctuary can only be done in 3 different ways. First, you might end up being sent to a bottom-tier spirit shelter. Spirits and creatures roam there, but if you can escape, then you live. Secondly, you can be sent to a human shelter and be safe from the get-go. Annie stopped for a moment, but then continued by saying, as tough as the first option may be, the second one is by no means easy to achieve. Human shelters are a rarity. Compared to the countless spirit shelters, the number humans own is very small. It is rare to end up at ordinary spirit shelters too, due to most having been destroyed by competing spirits. When conquered, they aren't taken over. They are put into ruin and left like so. Inferior shelters are quickly overcome by greater ones. You mentioned 3 different possibilities. Han Sen frowned, understanding the third had to be the most important. Yes, there is one other option, and that is to concede to the rule of spirits. You can sign a contract with them, pledging allegiance and fealty to their rule. A forfeiture of your life, as it were, Annie calmly said. Han Sen's reaction, however, was anything but. He was aghast. That was why the Alliance didn't make the situation there known to others. In the third god's sanctuary, humans are made slaves, more often than not. All I can assuredly tell you is, if you do end up at a bottom-tier spirit shelter, then congratulations. You'll most likely live. They are interracial, and if you do sign a contract with those, you will be treated as a fair member of their society. Only if it was a higher-class shelter might you be offered a contract to submit yourself to slavery. And if you cannot provide the resources they task you with obtaining, or that they first desire upon your arrival, then you may not even be granted the mercy of being their thrall. They will slay you without hesitation. Annie didn't talk anymore, but Han Sen was beginning to get a fair grasp on the complexity of the situation in the third god's sanctuary. Through this discussion, one thing was clarified for Han Sen, though. When that spirit brought the rhino to the third god's sanctuary, it must have espied the power within Han Sen and thus marked him. In the future, it would most likely bring Han Sen with it, also. Of course, it was only a mark. It wasn't as if a genuine contract had been signed. Contracts were only signed if both parties agreed. I wonder what class that spirit is? If it can come over to the second god's sanctuary and give the rhino a lift home with it, its level cannot be that low, Han Sen thought deeply, not wanting to become the slave of some spirit. Still, signing a contract with a spirit is not all bad. There may be benefits to such a thing, Ji Yanran said. What benefits would there be? Han Sen asked with surprise. Spirit gene. Ji Yanran slowly spoke out both words. Spirit genes? You can obtain genes by eating spirits? Han Sen's eyes opened wide, as this was the first time he had ever heard about something like this. Ji Yanran laughed and said, No, you can't get gene points from eating spirits. Eating spirits is pointless. Han Sen did not respond, and quietly waited for Ji Yanran's explanation instead. The differences between the second god's sanctuary and the third god's sanctuary were too big. Annie, you should explain this. Ji Yanran could not explain it herself as she hadn't been to the third god's sanctuary. Thus, she feared she couldn't describe it as efficiently as she might like. Annie nodded and said, The first god's sanctuary and second god's sanctuary require you to kill creatures in order to increase your fitness. In the third god's sanctuary, aside from fitness, you must also open your gene locks. There are two ways to unlock gene locks. First is through the hyper-geno art you learn. When your fitness gets stronger, and you practice more and more with the same skill, you can unlock higher tiers of your gene lock. This method requires the geno points of creatures. The higher your fitness is, the higher the chance you have of unlocking a gene lock. It also has something to do with your hyper-geno art. Some skills have 3 to 4 locks, whereas others have 8 to 9. Annie took a small break before continuing. Then, she said, the second method of unlocking a gene lock is to get spirit geno points from a spirit. If one spirit has unlocked 3 of its gene locks, you can receive 100 spirit geno points off them. This will allow you to unlock 1 gene lock. It takes 300 spirit geno points to unlock 3 locks. The power you get from unlocking gene locks will be the same as spirits receive. Your element and hyper-geno art does not matter. So, let me get this straight. If a spirit has unlocked 9 gene locks and grants me 900 gene points, that means I can be an elite with 9 open gene locks? Han Sen was shocked by this vat of information he was receiving. That's how it is supposed to work, yes? But even if the spirit gave you a spirit geno point, you would need a fitness level capable of receiving that power. If it is too low, your body won't be able to contain the power. Your body will break down if it unlocks too many gene locks at once, Ji Yanran explained. Spirit geno points are important to spirits, mind you. They won't randomly dish them out to humans, Annie added. So, how can I obtain these spirit geno points?
Han Sen asked.
You sign a contract with a spirit and become a member of their shelter's society. If you perform well, they can reward you with a fair amount of these spirit geno points. Annie looked at Han Sen with a pause in her speech, but then continued by saying, Of course, if you are powerful enough, then you can take a spirit stone. If the spirit does not self-destruct and instead accepts you as its new master, you can command the spirit to provide you with all its spirit geno points. But spirits would rarely accept masters in the third god's sanctuary, and the possibility of that happening is extremely low. And furthermore, low-level spirits aren't very useful. The tiers they can aid you in unlocking are too low, Ji Yanran said. Would spirits really provide humans with spirit geno points? Han Sen doubted this statement, finding it difficult to believe spirits were truly willing to provide humans, a different race, spirit geno points. They do, if you assign a contract with them and accept the spirit as your master. In the eyes of spirits, humans are no greater than the creatures they generally command. They will treat you as they do creatures, and the spirits treat creatures as they do you. They provide creatures with spirit geno points. But the higher-tier spirits make it harder for you to obtain their spirit geno points. That being said, some humans have been known to unlock 8 of their gene locks with spirit geno points. Can a spirit in the second god's sanctuary provide humans with spirit geno points?
Han Sen asked.
In the second god's sanctuary, no such creature exists right now. But people have theorized if a spirit had the same strength as a super creature, they might indeed have spirit geno points. But 1 gene lock is most likely the max they can provide, and that isn't worth very much. And humans will most likely be unable to obtain a spirit of such power here. Anyway, Ji Yinran answered. Spirit Geno points can grant you powers unlike any you've ever had. But improving your own body to sustain such power is just as important. After all, the Spirit Geno points don't originally belong to you. You only make use of the powers they provide. You don't own and command the distribution of Spirit Geno points. Unlocking gene locks through your own strength is better. Overall, their tolerance and harmony with your body would be far more fitting. True elites always depend on the powers they have earned themselves. They unlock gene locks by channeling their own strength, Annie elaborated. After talking to Annie and Ji Yinran, Han Sen had now learned a lot more about the basic structure of the Third God's Sanctuary. Although the power obtained from Spirit Geno points wasn't perfect, it could be considered a shortcut. Assuming he could cut a few corners and obtain such powers in a quicker manner as she was suggesting, Han Sen was fond of the idea. With stronger powers, Han Sen could kill creatures with greater ease and subsequently improve his own power through himself. There was nothing preventing such a thing. But if you wanted Spirit Geno points, you would have to sign a contract with a spirit. If you didn't, they wouldn't provide you with any. There were many pros and cons to weigh when it came to the signing of such a contract. Ordinary humans didn't really have much in the way of choice, and they were forced to sign such contracts. I wonder what level the spirit that took the rhino was? Han Sen thought to himself. During Han Sen's time back in the Alliance, Councilman Zhou contacted the Ji family. He and his family were incredibly appreciative of Han Sen's effort to lead his daughter safely out of the Black Desert. In return, they sent them many expensive gifts. Ji Yinran was shocked upon seeing the lucrative gift list. She laughed and said, "It looks like Zhou Yumei is quite important in her family. I don't think this appreciation stems from her position in the family. I'd wager they're more concerned with her ownership of a pet super creature. If it grows up, it'd be incredibly powerful, and that would indeed assert her as a prominent figure." Han Sen then proceeded to tell Ji Yinran the story of Han Sen's meeting and subsequent adventure with Zhou Yumei and Little Orange. Is such a thing possible? This is a big opportunity. I have to provide my family with this information. Ji Yinran and Annie had their eyes wide open. If you like pets, I can give you one.
Han Sen låg head.
Annie rolled her eyes, not believing what Han Sen told her. The child of a super creature would be incredibly powerful, and raising one was sure to be harder than killing one. Zhou Yumei was just incredibly lucky, she assumed. Achieving ownership of one would be no easy task. Han Sen was preparing to go out when he received a message saying he should expect another visitor. When Han Sen heard this, he frowned. Visitors weren't permitted there, so he thought it was strange to hear someone was coming to see him. Who might it be, I wonder? Han Sen had a few guesses, but he couldn't count on any. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter the base, so he made his way to the reception area. There, he saw a beautiful woman sitting. He couldn't tell her age, but he knew this was a woman he had never seen before. "You are Little Sen?" When the woman saw Han Sen, she greeted him with great enthusiasm and a warm smile. "I am Han Senator, who are you?" Han Sen frowned when he heard the woman call him Little Senior. "I am your aunt." The woman seemed surprised at Han Sen asking this. "Aunt?" Han Sen was shocked, never before hearing that he had aunt. "Didn't Sister Lan tell you that she has a little sister? That is heartbreaking for me to hear. I was just an orphan, picked and raised by my grandfather. I treated your mother as a true sister. I can hardly believe she never mentioned me before." The woman looked genuinely upset, almost as if tears were ready to burst from her eyes. "Who are you?"
Han Sen frov ned.
Understanding her identity in the family meant nothing to him. His mother said she never wanted to get involved with the Luo family. She wouldn't even let Han Sen learn the Luo family's skill. Although she never explained why, Han Sen trusted her and the reasons she must have had. As such, Han Sen never bothered trying to contact the Luo family. "You are so cold. It is no wonder you are Sister Lan's son." The woman smiled, and the sadness in her eyes had vanished. The change was sudden and quite jarring. "If there is nothing else for you to say, then I'll be leaving now." Han Sen turned around and prepared to make his exit. But the woman's hands were like lightning. She threw her finger in Han Sen's direction. Before it reached Han Sen, he felt its great power suddenly approaching his body. It was thinner than a needle and sharper than a blade, and its power was so great it instantly broke Han Sen's combat suit. Han Sen was shocked, not expecting the woman to attack him here, of all places. It was fortunate Han Sen reacted quickly. He fired his elephant disc punch to collide with the incoming hit.
Young.
Han Sen took a few steps back and hit the wall. His finger was cut so deep, the bone inside was on display. You didn't learn Falsified Sky Sutra? The woman looked at Han Sen with great surprise. If he had learned it, he would have been able to counter her attack. Han Sen was about to get angry, but upon hearing what she asked him, inquired, "What Falsified Sky Sutra?" Han Sen racked his mind as if to recall something. Then, he asked, "Wait, are you the one who gave me that unknown hypergeno art?" The woman shook her head and said, "I sent it to you, but it was a gift given to you by your great-grandfather. Why did you not take the time to learn it?" "I am not learning something from an unknown source," Han Sen coldly replied. "Well, it is no longer an unknown source. I hope you take the time to learn it in the near future." The woman felt awkward, coming here to test Han Sen's progress with the skill. She had not expected him to have not bothered with it at all. "If it's from the Luo family, then that means I'll definitely not learn it," Han Sen coldly said. "Why?" The woman frowned, looking at Han Senator. His answer had actually surprised her. "Because my mother wants no involvement with your family. You have received the answer to your question. Now you can leave." Han Sen gave her a stern, cold look. If his mom did not want him to engage with the Luo family, just as she herself didn't, then going against her wishes was the last thing he would do. He didn't want to worry her. And Han Sen didn't think it was necessary to learn Falsified Sky Sutra. Anyway, Dongxian Sutra and Blood Pulse were better than it. After all, do you have any idea what you're missing out on? There are only 5 hypergeno arts that have 10 gene locks available to open. Falsified Sky Sutra is one of them. The woman stared at Han Sen. "So what?" Han Sen asked her. The woman laughed in response, saying, "It looks like you really don't have any idea what you're missing out on. If you don't practice Falsified Sky Sutra, then you aren't a member of our family. You don't have the necessary qualifications to join Godslayer Shelter." "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not get the memo? My surname is Han, and Godslayer Shelter has nothing to do with me. I have no interest in joining there. And to add to that, I don't think Falsified Sky Sutra is all that impressive," Han Sen told her coldly. Hearing Han Sen's last few words, the smile quickly vanished from her face. With a chilling voice she said, "You are just like Sister Lan. You are so selfish and conceited. You don't care about anyone else, do you? As your aunt, I should really teach you a lesson. Do you have any idea where you are?" Han Sen raised his lips. "Wherever I am is a place of my own," Luo Li said. Then, she moved her body to begin attacking Han Sen. Her fingers were like razor blades, shredding the very air. An invisible force was headed Han Sen's way, moving at a blisteringly quick pace. Han Sen saw it coming, so he simulated the bone elephant's energy flow. Elephants trumpeted inside him once more, and his body turned the color of jade. He raised his fist and punched the incoming force. Pang! It sounded like glass being shattered. Luo Li's expression turned to one of shock in response, not expecting Han Sen's fist skills to have developed so strongly. She never expected him to be able to dwarf the power of the Falsified Sky Sutra. It was just a random punch of hers, but Han Sen had managed to crush it, and this surprised her. Luo Li was strangely confident in her Falsified Sky Sutra, however, and she wouldn't allow Han Sen to resist her powers. They were both evolvers. Luo Li did not believe herself to be invincible, but she didn't believe anyone could beat her if they had not learned the Falsified Sky Sutra. In Luo Li's eyes, she thought only Luo Lan had sufficient power to beat her. She always considered her sister to be her greatest opponent and greatest target. She could not allow herself to lose against her son, and she would not allow herself to lose against someone who had not even bothered to practice the Falsified Sky Sutra. An invisible power burst forth from her. Her hair waved like a madwoman's, floating in the air. Her hands became like blades, swinging towards Han Sen. The invisible power was like an indestructible blade. It sliced through the air as it traveled towards Han Sen. Luo Li's hands did not stop moving, as if she were a frenzied witch. Her hands became the invisible blades, attacking Han Sen without a single glimmer of restraint. Han Sen did not move an inch. Half of his body crackled and sparked with looming thunder, whereas his other half chimed like a bell. When the invisible blade storm was about to strike Han Sen, he threw out his fist. The combined powers of sonic and lightning channeled through his fist to form an orb of light in the palm of his hand. It grew into a silver sun and exploded out towards Luo Li with the break of deafening thunder. Crack! The invisible blade storm was like glass, as Han Sen's power shattered its cohesion and nullified its threat. As the lightning coursed through the air, a chilling noise sounded at the same time. The energy flow of Han Sen's attacker was distorted, which disabled her from gathering the composure needed to effectively dodge the incoming danger. Boom! Right before the lightning looked set to strike Luo Li, she summoned Beast Soul Armor. The armor and clothes underneath were incinerated by the wretched power possessed by the lightning. Pang! Luo Li's body was sent flying backwards into the wall of the reception area. Her mouth heaved blood as her burnt, tattered garments scattered messily across the room. Only a scrap or two clung to her body, smoldering. Nothing happened next. There was no counterattack. She just sat on the floor, staring at Han Sen with a ghastly look wrought by her disbelief over what had just transpired. She never believed she could lose to Han Sen, let alone to lose so quickly and badly. She found it just as hard to accept that she had been beaten by someone who had not learned the falsified Sky Sutra as well. No way, no way. Luo Li's lips were oozing blood as she sat there, muttering indiscernibly to herself, incapable of accepting the sudden defeat. Is that all you've got? Han Sen looked down on Luo Li. He removed his coat and handed it to her. As he turned around to exit the reception area, he said, "Leave. Neither I nor my mother have any interest in being a part of the Luo family anymore." Luo Li heard what Han Sen said and her body shook. As this happened, her mind stumbled back into the past. Is that all you've got? She had heard these words spoken to her many times while she was growing up. That proud and beautiful lady said the same thing to her every time she was defeated by her hands. Luo Li despised that sentence, and she held a further disgust for her pretty face. But now she was hearing it from someone else, and in a cruel twist of irony, that person was her son.
Impossible. Impossible.
He didn't learn falsified Sky Sutra. How can he have such power? There is no way I can lose to someone who has not learned falsified Sky Sutra, and there is no way I can lose to her son. Luo Li was screaming aloud in complete hysteria, but by now, she was in the room alone. Han Sen was unsure at what time Luo Li left, but after his encounter, he went to contact his mother about what had occurred. He wanted to confirm whether or not Luo Li truly was from the Luo family. Little Li really did seek you out? When Luo Sulan heard, she remained absolutely calm as if this was expected. There was a distinct lack of surprise in her voice. She really is my aunt? Han Sen had been suspicious of her claims. Yes, your great-grandfather believed I would be too lonely growing up on my own, so he adopted her. I haven't seen her since I abandoned the Luo family. Luo Sulan sighed. I can't learn the falsified Sky Sutra?
Han Sen asked.
You can learn it if you want, but by doing so, you bring upon yourself family business you won't be able to escape from. Luo Sulan sighed, thinking her son had been tempted by the falsified Sky Sutra after seeing it in action and witnessing what it could do. Well, if it really would bring me trouble, then forget it. I was just idly wondering, that's all, Han Sen said casually. Luo Sulan, with much surprise, asked, You really aren't tempted to try it? Not really. Auntie had learned the falsified Sky Sutra, and yet I was able to defeat her in a single punch, Han Sen casually relayed. Luo Sulan was even more surprised now, asking, You really managed to defeat her in a single punch? Yeah, it was easy. A cocky smile crept upon Han Sen's face. Luo Sulan, with a wry smile, said, It looks like you have developed further than I expected. And, I will say this, do not underestimate the falsified Sky Sutra. Although Little Li works her hardest, she isn't bound to the family through blood. That separation means she cannot learn the falsified Sky Sutra in its purest, most authentic form. How strong would the real falsified Sky Sutra be? Han Sen's interest in the skill had now increased. Although he managed to defeat her, he actually believed Luoli to be one of the strongest evolvers he had ever gone up against. It has the power of Ashura. If you ever end up going against someone who has learnt that skill, remember this: do not defend. Pitting yourself against a person who has learned it can only lead to two outcomes. You either end up killing that person quickly, or you die. Be quick or be dead. Luo Sulan said this, but it didn't quite explain enough. Mother, what happened to the Luo family? Han Sen could no longer hold his desire to know, so he asked. If you do not belong to the Luo family, there is no need for you to know. Knowing would needlessly burden you with greater troubles. If you did enter the Luo family, however, you would quickly come to know. This was a subject Luo Sulan had no desire to talk about. By this point in their conversation, Luo Li had already dragged herself out of the base. On a ship, she spoke with Luo Haiding. Luo Li did not refrain from telling the complete truth, and she told him exactly what had happened. After Luo Haiding heard this, a strange look came across his face. He asked, he didn't learn it?
No. Luuli Surelian Suarat.
He unleashed powers of thunder? Luo Haiding asked. Yes.
Luulian Suarat.
This is interesting. It is no wonder he is Little Land's son, then. He has indeed adopted Little Land's excellent genes, the ones required by our family. Luo Haiding coldly continued his speak. Tell Luoyin to meet him in the shelter. Let the boy see the true form of the falsified Sky Sutra. He has the Luo family blood coursing through his veins. It will be something he will be unable to resist. Yes, Luoli said, as she lowered her head. Han Sen entered the shelter once more and wanted to get a better grasp of his surroundings. He needed to learn exactly where he was and where he had to go next. Oh no. Oh no. There is a spirit attacking the shelter. As Han Sen sat in the plaza, contemplating his next move, a screaming person came running through. Immediately, everyone became nervous. A spirit attacking a shelter? When Han Sen heard them yell this, it surprised him a great deal. It had been a long time since he had last heard of a spirit attacking a shelter. Han Sen curiously went to the city's wall. He wanted to see what manner of spirit had decided to attack the shelter. If the owner could not withstand the siege, then perhaps he could lend a hand.
Han Sen.
As Han Sen walked towards the gate, someone called out his name. Lin Beifeng? Han Sen turned around with surprise. It had been a while since he had last seen him, and he did not expect to see him here in the second god's sanctuary. This is a fate-wrought meet, undoubtedly. Lin Beifeng ran over to Han Sen, grabbed his hands, and almost began bawling his eyes out. I'll confess it has been a while, but there is no need for such a display of passion. Seeing Lin Beifeng so happy, Han Sen was quite touched. Lin Beifeng wiped his teary eyes and maintained a grip on Han Sen's hands as he said, Brother, I am touched. In this dusty crap hole, even if my wallet were bursting at the seams, I cannot buy anything. It is a miserable and upsetting affair. Now that I have finally met you, I can spend my money on decent merchandise. Come, sell me 2 sacred blood beast souls. When Han Sen heard this, he threw his clingy hands away. The whole reason he was behaving so passionately was for this. It was now plain to see. You think sacred blood beast souls are a common item you can buy from just anywhere? And you're saying you want to?
Han Sen låg head.
I am not willing to believe you do not have any for sale. Lin Beifeng was unaffected by Han Sen's comments, and still insisted that he be sold some sacred blood beast souls. Lin Beifeng had been bored out of his mind in this place for quite some time. He was very rich, but his family lacked ties to the greater families. In his time here, few people had been willing to help him, and even with the money he couldn't buy anything decent. His time here had not been pleasant. He never expected to see Han Sen here, though, of all places. He had heard many tales regarding Han Sen's escapades, and having known him previously, was certain he would have sacred blood beast souls for sale. Brother Beifeng, cease your acting. Do you really think this child would have sacred blood beast souls available for sale? I have already given you my price. Either cough up the coin or get lost. Don't play games with me, a middle-aged man near Lin Beifeng said. I'm not buying your rubbish beast souls. This guy has all manner of different beast souls, so why would I buy ones from your crappy roster? Lin Beifeng coldly replied. People knew Lin Beifeng was rich, so it was common for people to attempt to scam him. There weren't many high-class beast souls in a place such as this, and such extortionists frequently grouped up to weasel the most coin out of him. They would sell him mutant beast souls for the price of a sacred blood beast soul. Either Lin Beifeng bought them or had nothing to use. He was a daily victim of this treatment. Unfortunately for him, these same schemers owned the shelters, and the prices they presented were unchangeable. After all, the prices were their call to make. Lin Beifeng had no choice but to suffer and accept the exorbitant fees they charged. Now that he had met Han Sen, he wasn't willing to be bullied anymore, and he most certainly wasn't going to buy their beast souls. Well, brother Beifeng, I give you an ultimatum. You either buy it now off me for this price or don't. But if you come around wanting to buy it again in the future, I can guarantee you the price won't be this generous, Lu Jie fearlessly said. He did not believe the pretty, young stranger possessed a single sacred blood beast soul. Lu Jie knew all about this place and the surrounding area, and he knew that the shelter only had a dozen mutant beast souls available for sale. There weren't any sacred blood beast souls to be found in the markets, and there most certainly wouldn't be any on a pretty, young man. Whatever, Lin Beifeng coldly said. Then he ignored the extortionist. Turning back to face Han Sen, he smiled and said, Let's go, brother. I am buying you food. And perhaps, just perhaps, we might talk a while as we eat. Forgive me for interrupting your plans for lunch, but don't we have a spirit attacking the shelter right now? Shouldn't we go take a look? Han Sen said, smiling. Sure, let's go take a look at what we face. Lin Beifeng felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that with Han Sen's help, however, he'd be able to move to another royal shelter and not remain stuck where he currently was. People in the shelter had mercilessly bullied him, extracting every penny they could through a barrage of tricks and scams. No one had been willing to help him move to another royal shelter. He couldn't do it on his own, but right now, with Han Sen at his side, he knew he wouldn't have to worry. They both ascended the city wall, and looking over, they witnessed a spirit commanding creatures to attack the shelter. After taking a look, Han Sen quickly lost interest. It was a royal spirit that looked like an ugly ogre. It was something Han Sen was not interested in killing or claiming the spirit stone for. The creatures that were attacking the shelter were mutant creatures, as well. Han Sen was too lazy to bother slaying such unthreatening creatures. But the people in the shelter quickly grew concerned and considered their would-be conquerors as a grave threat. Lin Beifeng was very tempted to help, so he asked Han Sen, Brother, do you have any sacred blood beast souls? If you lend me 2, I will go down there and show them how it's done. Han Sen gave him 2 sacred blood beast souls that he would never otherwise use, which made Lin Beifeng super happy. He was given a sacred blood armor and the long-forgotten ghost pod claws. After suiting up, Lin Beifeng hastily ran out to greet the attackers who sought to claim the shelter. Through the aid of his new sacred blood beast souls, although Lin Beifeng was not that strong, he could easily slay the ordinary creatures. Even the mutant variants could do nothing to him and were soon cut down. Lin Beifeng had become an extremely powerful man, as he was seen cleaving his way through the hordes of monsters down below. He even looked quite heroic, and this shocked the people of the shelter. By the time all was said and done, he managed to beat the ogre into running away. Once his victory was assured, everyone gave him massive applause. After beating the spirit, Lin Beifeng himself was exuberantly happy. When the deed was complete, he spared no time in bringing Han Sen to a hotel where they could eat. Not long after, a group of people arrived at the shelter. Lu Jie and the people in charge went to welcome the team. Lu Jie, didn't you send a message as a plight for aid, saying a royal spirit sought to conquer the shelter? What is this? Lu Kuang asked, frowning. With him, he had brought a team of fairly skilled warriors. They were to support him in slaying the mutant horde, but now that they had arrived, they were surprised to see the fight already over. Brother Kuang, a kid came out of nowhere and sold 2 sacred blood beast souls to Lin Beifeng. His mood was cockier than usual today, and so he promptly went out to slay the creatures and send the ogre back off to its hole. Lu Jie relayed to him what had transpired during his absence. What is this kid's association with Lin Beifeng? Lu Kuang frowned. He believed Lin Beifeng was a worthless piece of meat who was easy to bully. And bully him they did, frequently, in this night shelter. Now, someone had sold him 2 sacred blood beast souls. This meant they could no longer scam money from his coffer. He said they were friends. He was about 20 years old at the most. He had silky skin, the sort which made him look quite weak and useless. I would say he was just like Lin Beifeng, a loser from a rich family. God knows where he managed to get 2 sacred blood beast souls to sell to Lin Beifeng. Lu Jie approached him closer and continued by saying, "Brother Kuang, should we take care of this kid?" Lu Kuang gestured with his hand and said, "Getting sacred blood beast souls will not be easy. And if that kid is not from our shelter and has been able to come out all this way, he must be fairly experienced." After a pause, he continued by saying, "Are you sure no one else followed this kid's arrival?" "Yeah. I have been sending people to keep an eye on them, and knowing about everyone else in this shelter, I can indeed confirm that there is no one else here aside from him," Lu Jie quickly said. "Good." Lu Kuang's eyes were tinged with hate and cruelty. He went on to say, "Little Zhang, go and bring Brother Blind." Brother Blind's namesake was not derived from any blight of blindness. In fact, his vision far exceeded the capabilities of most. He was called Brother Blind, however, because of how much he sought money. As long as there was money on offer, he'd take whatever job or task he could. He would commit any sordid deed, even murder, due to his blindness in the presence of money. But Brother Blind was powerful, make no mistake, and he could easily kill sacred blood creatures. Even in the royal shelter, no one would dare offend him. Lu Kuang wouldn't underestimate someone who could present a sacred blood beast soul, so he extended an invitation for Brother Blind to come here. As this was occurring, Lu Kuang went to observe Han Sen and Lin Beifeng. He couldn't discern much about Han Sen and hadn't the clue what his reputation was. If Han Sen did hail from a big family, he figured he'd have been able to easily recognize the man. Lacking smarts and cultural attention, he did not even realize that he was looking at the son-in-law of the president. Han Sen's appearance was just as Lu Jie described. He looked to be 20 years old at the most, and could best be described as another typical pretty boy. It didn't look as if he'd endured a single hardship. Seeing the kid now, he thought Lu Jie had indeed made a fair and correct judgment of him. Lu Kuang was a patient person, however. He was in no rush to strike, and he was happy to wait for Brother Blind's arrival. "Brother Kuang, they have now left the shelter. When is our time to strike?" After keeping tabs on them for half a day, Lu Jie hastened to report their exit from the shelter to Lu Kuang. "Patience. There is no need to rush. Brother Blind is en route. They must be heading to a royal shelter, so we'll take a detour, meet up with Brother Blind, and set a roadblock for them." After saying this, Lu Kuang assembled a group and left the shelter to enact their plan. They walked through a woodland for 10 whole miles before meeting up with Brother Blind. They hid along the veiling thickets that skirted the sides of the road that led to the royal shelter. Not long after, 2 people came into sight. They rode on 2 beasts, and just as expected, they were indeed Han Sen and Lin Beifeng. "Brother Blind, that's them." Lu Jie put away his binoculars and spoke, while pointing towards their sought-after prey. Brother Blind did not need to use binoculars, and as he watched the 2 people from afar, a queer look came upon him. "These are the people you have tasked me to deal with?" Brother Blind asked Brother Kuang and Lu Jie to confirm. "Yes, that is them," Lu Jie said. Slash. A soft sword, very much like a ribbon, was drawn by Brother Blind's hands. Blood coated the sword as Lu Jie's head was suddenly flung from his shoulders and into the sky. The eyes of the severed head were open wide, in a sudden fright and confusion. "Brother Blind, what was that for?" Lu Kuang and the rest were all aghast at the sudden turn of events. In response, they all drew their weapons and faced Brother Blind warily. Brother Blind coldly laughed and said, "I may pursue coin blindly, but even I won't throw my life away for it. If you have sought to task me with a suicide run, then I have no choice but to kill you." Lu Kuang's face changed. With shock, he asked, Are you saying that guy is quite something? Han Sen's presence had unknowingly unblind Brother Blind. For this to suddenly happen, a bad feeling crept over Lu Kuang's mind. He is not just something. That guy is everything. Even your boss could end up working as a grunt below him. And you want to finger him for assassination? I admire your boldness and courage. Brother Blind cackled creepily. Lu Kuang was taken aback. He did not expect a young man such as that to possess such a frightening background. He gritted his teeth and said, Brother Blind, this was our mistake. We almost got you killed. Keep the money we were to offer you. But this was Lu Jie's fault. How about we let sleeping dogs lie and move past this? There is no need to upset our relationship. If that was anybody else, I would take you up on your offer. But that person is someone I would give my life to defend. Wanting to kill him is worse than wanting to kill me. I cannot spare your lives. After Brother Blind said that, he moved his soft sword. What hurt the most was not the blade, but the sensations it imparted. Brother Blind's sword skills were soft and gentle. Every time the blade moved, a separate scream would emanate from the woods. Not long after, half of Lu Kuang's men were dead. They rest were trembling in fear, feeling deep regret over what they had proposed to do. Lu Kuang was terrified. Most of all, he tried to run away but could not. He ran 500 meters before the soft sword pierced through his heart. You could almost sympathize with Lu Kuang, with the look of anguish that came upon his face. He wasn't given a chance to say anything more before being mercilessly slain. He coughed up blood from his agape mouth. Then he fell down to the earth with his eyes wide open. None of the group were spared. Each person there was either beheaded or staked through the heart. One hit, one kill, for each of them. It was a cruel and brutal sight. Han Sen and Lin Beifeng heard some noises coming from the woods as they passed by. Looking to scope it out, Han Sen stumbled across a clearing that was strewn with bodies. In their midst, Brother Blind stood wiping his sword clean. It's Lu Kuang and Lu Jie. Lu Kuang is Lu Jie's boss in the royal shelter. How could they? Lin Beifeng was shocked upon seeing the corpses all about. Han Sen quickly understood what Lu Kuang had sought to do, but what he did not know was the identity of the lone man before them, and why he had killed them all. Thank you for the help, friend. What is your name?
Han Sen asked.
I don't consider this aid. I was just sparing you the trouble. Brother Blind let out his signature cackle. It was creepy. Call me Blind. Do we know each other? But Han Sen couldn't help but frown and ponder the reason for his name. He clearly wasn't blind, so why did he wish to be called that? Yes, of course. We do indeed. Brother Blind nodded, but did not explain any further. Han Sen was a little puzzled by this curious encounter, so he asked another question. Where are you from? It does not matter where I come from. What does matter is something important you ought to know, Brother Blind said. What? Han Sen frowned, thinking this Blind was quite the strange fellow. Do not join the Luo family. Brother Blind said these words slowly, with a grave tone. Is this a warning or a friendly reminder? Han Sen asked the blind man. How you discern my words is up to you. Blind man did not explain. Instead, he pulled out a bag and tossed it over to Han Sen. Han Sen caught it, and it felt like there was a book or something inside, but he wasn't entirely sure. The bag was composed of highly advanced cloth. Practice this when you find the time. It should help. After that, Blind Man turned around and left. He moved quickly, and within a second, he disappeared from sight. Han Sen just stood there, watching the blind man disappear into the woods. He wasn't quite sure what he had just been witness to. Han Sen had the feeling he had been granted the duty of saving the world. He turned away from Lin Beifeng and had a quick peek into the bag he had been given. There really was a book in there, and the paper looked fairly modern. It must have been produced in the Alliance in the past few years, and was undoubtedly waterproof, fireproof, and bug-proof. Han Sen was a little disappointed, learning that it was not some ancient codex. If it was, he believed he could sell it for a high price as an antique. There was no name on it, strangely. After having a flick through the contents, he learned that it was neither a hyper-geno art or qigong. It was similar to primal innocence, but better, with a far greater depth. It related to psychological fortitude and constitution, and contained within it many examples. It was like a compendium or guide to prevent one from being subjected to fraud or scams. Who was that blind man? And what did he give me this for? I am not going to be a salesman, and neither am I going to teach others how to avoid being scammed. Han Sen was quite confused. Han Sen thought about it and came to the conclusion that reading it would prove no harm. It might actually end up being beneficial and could aid him in avoiding the schemes of confidence men in the future. For now, though, he put it away. The high-class officers in the Alliance all looked sickly and evil. God knew how many wretched ideas were concocted in their minds. After all, Han Sen continued his journey and brought Lin Beifeng all the way to the royal shelter safely. Although Lin Beifeng did not know anyone there, having wealth meant he could have or do anything he wanted to. It was very unlike the tiny night shelter that didn't even have anything to spend coin on. Brother, I thank you so very much. If it weren't for you, I'd still be there in that night shelter, being subject to mistreatment by those bastards. If you remain in the shelter for a few days, I promise I'll get you something good. It'll be the least I can do to return the favor you have done me. Plus, it'll cover what I owe you for the sacred blood beast souls, Lin Beifeng said to Han Sen. There is no rush, but I do plan to remain here for a couple of days. If you require further assistance, I can help you get in touch with the special security team for your protection, too. They're good at what they do, but you'll have to pay for their services.
Han Sen smiled.
That is brilliant to hear, brother. But let's not speak any further. Wait for my good news. Lin Beifeng was more than pleased, loving the prospect of being helped by the special security team. By himself, his reputation would not have granted him the privilege, but with Han Sen's help, such a thing was possible. Han Sen did this on Lin Beifeng's behalf due to the concern he felt for him. He was worried that, left to his own devices, it wouldn't be long before someone else got their treacherous, money-prying hooks in him, or someone else that was associated with Lu Kuang might come after him once Han Sen was out of the picture. Han Sen stayed in the shelter and then got in touch with the special security team. He hired a bodyguard for Lin Beifeng's protection. Han Sen was not in a rush to leave and elected to spend some time deliberating his next move. He was initially going to go see his mother, so he could protect her and aid her in collecting Super Geno points. But seeing how his mom last responded when he brought the subject up, she didn't seem like she cared too much. Therefore, it was unnecessary for him to walk a few 100,000 miles to go see her. If he wanted to see his mom, he would have preferred to request a vacation in which he could go home and have a rest. Han Sen took to info gathering during stay in the shelter, and he spent some time digging around on Skynet. He was keen to learn whether or not there were nearby super creatures. The more he killed, the more points he would gain. And right now, he wanted to speed up so he could access the third god's sanctuary sooner. In fact, Han Sen felt quite pressured. The people he had been interacting with recently were beginning to make him feel a little dwarfed. He felt weak. Not being able to protect himself in the Alliance made him extremely uncomfortable. After a while of browsing, Han Sen came across a good place he could visit. At a nearby mountain, there was a nest of creatures. The shelter had tried to rout the fiends and force them to vacate the area, but the creatures were too powerful. Each time the shelter attempted to strike, they were brought a ruinous defeat. Therefore, it had been a while since they last tried to take on the nest. Han Sen viewed a few records of what the survivors had experienced in the attacks. He was able to confirm that there was indeed a super creature there, and that was all Han Sen needed to know before electing to go there. When he was in the first god's sanctuary, Han Sen once guessed a creature's egg had a super creature inside it. If the egg had not been broken before it naturally hatched, a super creature would have been born. Back then, these were just guesses Han Sen made. If this nest had super creatures there, then that would prove his guesses were correct. After obtaining a map, Han Sen set out to where the cave was said to be. With the silver fox in tow, not a single ill happenstance transpired. He was able to walk straight up to the nest. Han Sen climbed into a stone cave and noticed a green gold wall that had been broken. Beyond it was a hulking emerald crystal that was humanoid in shape. Han Sen used his Dongxian Sutra to scan it, and was surprised to learn that what he was seeing was indeed the creature he had come to hunt. It was a super creature. Han Sen summoned his little angel to start the fight with the emerald golem while he ventured deeper into the nest, wanting to see if an egg remained. With the silver fox there, None of the other creatures dared get close to Han Sen. This was good news for him, since he couldn't be bothered with fighting them anyway. With the fairy flying around as well, they were sure not to bother him. Han Sen quickly walked inside the nest and saw an egg inside. It was, however, cracked and empty. Now, he believed his prior guesses even more. If the first-generation super creatures are birthed from eggs, where do the eggs come from? Han Sen had trouble with this conundrum, thinking he might never find the answer. The nest was deep underground, so it might be a while before humans figured this one out. Han Sen then returned to the entrance and saw the little angel continuing to do battle with the golem. The emerald golem had sustained many scrapes and cuts. Even if Han Sen decided not to chip in, it didn't seem likely to last very long. And again, Han Sen could not be bothered to fight. He found a rock that was shaped near enough like a chair, sat down, and held the gourd as he watched the little angel fight the emerald golem. He didn't really want to slay the golem, since he couldn't absorb the life geno-essence of a first-generation super creature, and obtaining a beast soul was reliant purely on luck. Since its dunk, the blood color of the gourd had finally faded away. Whatever was inside must have absorbed it all, and right now, veins of gold light ran all across it. The energy flow of the gourd was becoming more and more obvious, and it had changed a lot since when he first laid hands on it. This surprised Han Sen quite a bit, and it seemed to him that there was something growing deep inside. Han Sen paid more attention to this new energy flow and noticed that the power inside was not too different from the holy rhinos. But Han Sen did not understand the reason the gourd had an energy flow such as that. No matter how strong it was, it could only magnetize objects. Its power wouldn't directly deal damage. The emerald golem was dying, and the little angel effortlessly exploited its every weakness. Within half an hour, it would most probably lie dead. The emerald golem consistently cried and roared out, but it was unable to do anything else. The little angel's great sword repeatedly struck the neck of the emerald golem until its head was hewn off. It did not die when the head was removed, however. It continued to fight the little angel, even with a headless body. Fortunately, the little angel wasn't human. Decapitating the golem did not make her careless or have her drop her guard, and she was able to dodge the headless golem's surprise attack following its beheading. To ensure its defeat, the little angel spent the next several hours hacking away the rest of the golem's crystal limbs. Super creature Emerald Golem killed.
No beast soul gun.
The flesh of this creature is inedible, but you may harvest its life geno-essence. Consume its life geno-essence to gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. Not receiving its beast soul was a little disappointing for Han Sen, but regardless, he picked up the fallen creature's green life geno-essence. He unsummoned the little angel and left the nest. He did not return to the shelter, but traveled west instead. During his research, he had learned of 2 nearby locations he wanted to check out. It was an area comprised of sprawling meadows, each painted with innumerable flowers that were all knitted together. As serene as the area was, the number of flowers put it on the radar for a great many insects. Butterflies, bees, ants, and more frequented this place. But it was said there was something even spookier that resided there, something that stilled the hearts and desires for all who ventured near. To determine the validity of people's fears, Han Sen wanted to travel into the heart of the meadows and see for himself whether or not there was a super creature residing there. Bugs were known to produce many offspring. If there was a super creature insect there, it might have been similar to the devil ant king and possess a large number of eggs. The verdant expanse before him was quite lumpy, but it was dressed with a sea of colorful flowers. These meadows went on and on towards the horizon, appearing endless. The flowers weren't particularly large, but they grew close to the soil and fit together as if to paint the ground. The colors did not just stem from the large variety of flowers budding in harmonic unison, but individual flowers themselves could possess up to 8 colors. Countless butterflies and bees danced in the air around them, yet no person ever went there to hunt. Han Sen ventured into the flowery meadows and brought the silver fox along with him. All the butterflies and bees made sure to escape and flee for the lives in fear of the super creature pet. The little fairy retreated into her scallop shell. After recovering from her wounds, the liquid inside no longer dealt her harm. As such, she frequently enjoyed hiding inside it. After walking for some time, Han Sen was given a big surprise. He saw a person in the field, killing creatures. Many insects swarmed towards him, but despite that, the man looked calm and composed. Untouched by a single creature, he gently swung his sword to slay each that came for him. Jing Jiwu. When Han Sen recognized the man, he became even more surprised. He was the monster from the Alliance's Central Military Academy. In the Military Academy's league game, in archery, Han Sen won his first championship. Jing Jiwu now caught sight of Han Sen's approach and sped up to finish off the creatures that pestered him. Within a single second, he managed to slay around 1,000 butterflies. The field was, for now, empty of the fluttering fiends. Once he was done, he walked towards Han Sen. I never expected a chance encounter with you here, of all places, Jing Jiwu said casually as he approached Han Sen. I could not have expected this either.
Han Sen smiled.
Although they were once opponents, it was nice to meet him there. I have heard you are in possession of a super pet, Jing Jiwu said. Yes.
Han Sen nodded.
High-class officers had long spread this news, so it wasn't at all surprising for Jing Jiwu to know about the silver fox. Walk west for 100 miles, and you'll come across a muddy hill. There are many gold-winged bees there, and quite possibly super creatures, too. If you're interested, you should go and take a look, Jing Jiwu said. Thanks. Han Sen bid his appreciation and then took off in the direction he was told to go. They didn't speak much with one another, but they were cooperative and adherent to the other's needs. Han Sen did not doubt the information he was given. I was hoping we would one day meet again, and when we did, I'd be strong enough to re-challenge you. I am short of that goal. Seeing Han Sen walk off, Jing Jiwu watched him go. He continued to think to himself, yes, become stronger. Go further. Give me the motivation to catch up with you. That will assuredly stoke a fire in the hearts of humanity. Then he threw himself into the midst of another legion of butterflies. Han Sen continued traveling in the direction Jing Jiwu had indicated, and after walking 100 miles, he came across a 40-meter high hill that was shaped like a mushroom. There were many small burrows underneath, from which golden bees came in and out of. They were each around the size of a fist. These really aren't your average bees. I am afraid there might indeed be a super creature in this place. Han Sen was standing 100 meters away from the hill, yet the silver fox's presence did nothing to alarm the golden bees. There had to be a super creature burrowed deep inside. If there wasn't, then the bees would have assuredly paid heed to the silver fox's approach. They'd have been long gone by now. Han Sen was thinking about how he might flush the bee king out and see what manner of super creature he'd be dealing with. But as he thought, he caught sight of a lone pretty flower atop the hill. The flower had no roots or leaves. It just stood there atop the hill. It was a few meters wide, and the petals looked like those of a Chinese rose. The flower was mostly yellow, but it was colored with a few streaks of red. It was very pretty. It also emitted a pleasant smell. It was strong but not overwhelming, and just smelling that fragrance compelled you to come closer and sniff it at a closer distance. The flower was beautiful, and it looked as if honey was oozing from inside the bud. But despite the large number of golden bees that populated the area, not a single one ventured close to it. Strange. That is really strange. Why is there a lone flower atop a beehive, remaining untouched by the bees that live below? And the rest of the flowers in this place are no larger than my finger. So why is this one so large? There must be something wrong with this thing. Han Sen used his Dongxian aura to scan the flower. Because it was quite far from him, he couldn't scan it with much detail. Still, he was able to grasp some sort of horrific life force where it lay. Is that flower producing creatures, or is it perhaps something that strengthens your body? Han Sen looked at the flower with a strange look on his face, wanting to be as careful as possible. Han Sen had seen this sort of thing many times. Treasures like this frequently had frightening monsters nearby, and such creatures were never in short supply. Whenever such flowers matured, other creatures were bound to show up. Han Sen watched the flower open from afar. Slowly, the petals unfurled. It was a beautiful thing to watch. Not long after, the sky went dark and the moon arose. Under the gleaming moonlight, the flower fully opened. In the center of the flower, golden pistils grew outwards as if reaching for the nighttime sun. It was pretty like jade, and it shone gold in the grace of the moonbeams. The sweet fragrance became stronger at this point. Even Han Sen, who was 300 meters away, became enveloped by the smell. It gave him the urge to run up to the flower and lick it for a tantalizing taste of the juices within. Suddenly, however, there was movement from the beehive. The golden-winged bees outside began to go crazy until eventually, a 1-foot-long crystal gold bee king exited the tunnels that led into the interior of the beehive. Bee king? Han Sen was shocked. He used his Dongxian aura to scan it, and it was revealed to be a first-generation super creature due to its blurry life force. Han Sen was a little disappointed, but he still watched it with great interest. He was trying to determine what he should do next. The bee king flew atop the hill where the flower rested and landed upon a pistil of the open flower. It then started to drink nutrients from its top. Han Sen gulped, earnestly wishing he could go and join the bee in drinking the juices the flower had concocted. But for now, he held the urge back and remained still. The bee king wouldn't usually come out to eat. It had many lesser, worker bees to gather food on its behalf. As such, there would never be a need for it to exit the safety of the hive. If the king was coming out to eat the flower itself, then that was a surefire sign that whatever the flower was, it was indeed special. But rare things such as that would usually have more than one super creature guarding or vying for it. Yet strangely, no other creature seemed to show up. Han Sen became oddly suspicious, seeing that the bee king had been eating for quite some time without any intrusion. While Han Sen contemplated his next move and whether or not he should nick the flower from the bee king, the super creature's honey sac filled up with the juices. At this point, it flew back inside the hive. Not long after, the bee king returned from the hive once more. It flew back up to the flower, undoubtedly for further collection of the juices. It did this a few times until the moon reached its highest point in the sky. It was also at this time that the flower began to shrink and recede. The bee king did not eat the honey because it's saving it. Han Sen's heart jumped as he imagined that. Normally, kings eat the best stuff. If it isn't eating it itself, then perhaps it has babies to feed? Maybe there are child super creatures someplace within? Thinking of this, Han Sen fancied venturing into the beehive to have a look for himself. Even if there were no second-generation super creatures, the bee king's honey would come in useful for himself. But Han Sen was patient, and he wanted to watch things for a little while longer. This was a large group of creatures, and it was not going to be a simple super fight. He didn't believe the little angel could tackle the beehive and its occupants all alone. The fairy rarely listened to his commands, either. If the fairy went in ahead and consumed all the honey, it'd be a big loss. The silver fox enjoyed eating such rare delights, too. With both of them there, Han Sen had to be careful. Exerting much effort for no reward would be a crying shame. After watching the beehive for a few days, Han Sen had learned that the flower produced those juices each and every night. And every night, the king would venture out and collect it from the flower. It seemed that the flower produced an endless amount of juices, and no matter how much was collected, the next day the king would be back to obtain as much as it could within the same time frame. No matter how big the Chinese rose was, the juices inside had to be limited, though. How could it resist the ravenous appetite of the bee king each and every night? Something had to be severely wrong here. Han Sen hesitated, but decided to summon his wings and fly forward. Night was settling in now, and he decided to view the flower from above. He saw there was still plenty of juice atop the pistils, and the bee was keen to continue collecting it. When the moon reached its highest point, the bee king had collected all the juice. It was at this point the flower became smaller, but it looked as if it was just waiting to be reopened. The next day, when Han Sen flew high to take another look, the juices in the pistil had been fully replenished. This confused him a great deal. What is going on? Han Sen continued to think on his discovery, not wanting to be reckless. If he couldn't figure out the finer details of this curious phenomenon, he wouldn't strike lightly. While it was daytime, Han Sen heard a buzzing noise. He didn't care much, since there were many bugs and insects all around, It wasn't a particularly unique sound, but this time, the buzzing sound was getting louder and louder. When the sound was as deafening as a helicopter landing in Han Sen's ear, he perked his head to pay attention. When Han Sen raised his head, he saw a green cloud heading his way. Curiously, the sound was coming from that very cloud. After looking closer, he noticed that it wasn't a cloud. It was a sickeningly large host of fist-sized green flies. With great ferocity, they went flying down towards the beehive. The bees outside the hive all looked startled and nervous. A group of bees exited the tunnels of the hive and attempted to stop the approach of the green fly army. The area was cloaked in gold and green, as a battle between the two insect collectives unfolded. Like rain, countless bees and flies cascaded down to the ground amidst the battle. The death toll was humongous. Han Sen was shocked at the sight, but he noticed that the green flies were not as strong as the golden bees. They did, however, make up for the lack in power with sheer numbers. They were overwhelming, and they fearlessly kamikazed their way towards the hive. Most of them did not even want to fight. They seemed to just want the honey. The bees were strong, but their numbers were few. Although they guarded the entrances to the hive, many green flies managed to get inside. Before long, the bee king itself exited the hive to greet the assault and quickly wiped out the green flies that attempted to worm their way inside. Within seconds of exiting, it was killing whole hordes of the insects. But still, their numbers were too many. They were like a plague of locusts, and wherever the bee king did not look in that second, countless wretched flies tried to dig their way inside. Han Sen assumed the flies were trying to steal the honey at first, but then he saw that he was incorrect. The sneaky flies that had managed to get inside made their way out shortly after, all in possession of light gold cocoons. These flies are not here for the honey, so what are they stealing the cocoons for? Han Sen was confused by this revelation. The bees were furious upon seeing their cocoons being stolen, and in a frenzy, they killed any fly in possession of one. One by one, they were killed, and one by one, cocoons dropped to the ground. More and more flies battled their way forward, however, and many picked up where their fallen compatriots left off. The cocoons were picked up once more and carried away. The bee king, seeing its cocoons had been stolen, became frenzied. Like a gold beam of light, it cut its way into the horde of flies. These streaks of gold light fired across the sky multiple times, and each time, countless dismembered fly corpses dropped to the ground. Despite the bee king's power, however, the green flies were not afraid and did not relent. Free of fear, they pushed on to retrieve the cocoons. Fortunately for them, the bee king lacked AoE attacks, and as a result, many cocoons were carried away.
Han Senes heart jumped.
He followed a fly that was holding a cocoon, keen to see what they were going to do with it. The flies were bringing the cocoons past the flower-painted meadows. They were only sacred blood creatures at the most, and thus, Han Sen was able to follow them with relative ease. After following them for 20 miles, he was brought to the edge of the ocean of flowers. What came after, however, was a wretched bog. It was a veritable domain of thick, stinking mud and lifeless trees and flowers. But still, Han Sen continued to tail the flies without hesitation. Before long, he came across a green spider that was the size of a basketball. The flies approached the spider, and when they did, they threw the cocoons over to it. The spider then gobbled them up vilely. Flies were no strangers to swamps, but their allegiance to the spider was most queer. It seemed as if they had been hypnotized by the lone arachnid, allowing themselves and a legion of others to be slaughtered while retrieving the bee's cocoons at the spider's behest. This was quite the revelation, and so Han Sen quickly used his Dongxian aura to study the spider he had come across. It was a super creature, yes, but again, it was a first-generation one. Is this long-legged fellow producing babies? Is that why it's eating?
Han Sen felt strange.
He had come to notice that the super creatures in the second god's sanctuary bred a lot more than they did in the first god's sanctuary. It looks like all these creatures are keen to evolve. But how powerful must one become to be like the holy rhino and leave and ascend to the third god's sanctuary? Han Sen thought it unlikely, or at least very difficult, for a second-generation super creature to reach such a level. The green flies were now bringing many cocoons to the spider, and one by one, the spider ate them all. A while later, another spider emerged from a nearby cave. It looked similar to the green spider, just smaller. It was around the size of a baseball. Its body was like green jade, and it was a lot better looking than the other one. Second generation? Han Sen was super excited. He cast his aura again, but was befuddled. It possessed a strange life force he had not seen before. Although it was not as strong as the silver fox, it was much stronger than a sacred blood creature. It had to be a second-generation super creature.
Yes.
Han Sen bounded with excitement, and without hesitation, sicked his little angel on the big spider. Then he summoned his peacock crossbow and loaded it up with Z-steel bolts. He stood by and waited. The big spider was bringing its baby forward, getting it to feed. But when it caught sight of the little angel approaching in a flash, it spat a white net to web her greatsword. The little angel's greatsword was able to slice through the entangling web, but its force coming down was much weaker. Climbing quickly, the spider continued to fire its webs at the little angel. This caused her a lot of trouble, and as they added up, the webs were becoming increasingly sturdy and sticky. Although she could cut her way through, much of it remained on her body and soared to slow her down. The smaller spider was hyped up, making screeches and waving its claws at the intruder. It then followed its parent and produced webs to spit out. They were extremely small, but they were concentrated and of a higher power. They were thicker and stickier than the bigger spider's webs. As this was occurring, Han Sen raised his peacock crossbow to take aim. He thought to himself, "It's survival of the fittest, baby. There's always a bigger fish. You eat the cocoons, I eat you. It's simple." As he took his careful aim, he also employed his Dongxian aura to memorize the little spider's energy flow. While the little spider happily spat out webs like its parent, Han Sen pulled the trigger and rapidly fired multiple bolts towards it. Squelch! As it spat out its last web, multiple white flashes cut through its body. The body of a young super creature could not compete with the body of an adult super creature, but the chitin of a spider was known to be extremely sturdy. Even Han Sen was surprised to see his bolts pierce right through it. But, another 3 bolts found their way into the spider's body, all from varying angles. It tried to struggle and remain upright, but by now, the spider was more like a hedgehog. It stopped squirming. Super creature Devil Eye Spider Baby killed. Beast soul gained. Eat the flesh of the Devil Eye Spider Baby to gain 0 to 10 Super Geno points randomly. You may also harvest its Life Geno Essence. Consume its Life Geno Essence to gain 0 to 10 Super Geno points randomly. Han Sen almost jumped when he heard that. He never expected to kill the spider so easily and obtain its beast soul. He managed to earn so much from a single, effortless kill. When the mama spider saw its child brutally murdered, it became furious. It skittered towards Han Sen in hysteria, with an insatiable bloodthirst for the person who had just slain its baby. Han Sen did not run, however. He now knew that compared to other super creatures, the Devil Eye Spider was relatively weak. He cast his Sonic Thunder Punch, ready to strike once it got close enough. The thunder and bell power brewed inside him as a frightening mixture, and as soon as the spider was close, Han Sen would unleash it on the unsuspecting fiend. He hoped to stun it, but Han Sen, upon looking into the spider's blue eyes, felt a strange murky fog mask the clarity of his mind. He lost hold of the energy that was gathering inside him, canceling his proposed Sonic Thunder Punch. A second later, Han Sen was back to normal. The spider was right in front of him, raising its legs to claw his face off. At the last second, Han Sen quickly cast a skill to dodge. In his heart, he thought to himself, "That was close. The spider can actually control the mind of a human being with its hypnotic eyes? It is fortunate my will was mutated following my trip to the crystallizer ruins and became stronger than ordinary people's. If I hadn't recovered in that quick second, I might have been killed right there." The little angel rushed over to inhibit the spider's pursuit of Han Senator in haste. Han Sen closed his eyes and retreated to gain some distance. He used his Dongxian aura to observe the spider's next move and prepared another bolt with the arachnid's name on it. As he had thought, As long as he avoided eye contact with the spider, his mind maintained its clarity. And then, with his aim raised, he relentlessly fired a number of bolts towards the creature. With the aid of Han Sen's bolts, Little Angel finally managed to land a strike on the Devil-Eye Spider. When the sword was driven through the spider's body, green blood squirted from the orifice. It took another 2 strikes with the Little Angel's greatsword for her to finish it off. Super creature Devil-Eye Spider killed.
No Beast Soul Gun.
You may harvest its life Geno Essence. Consume its life Geno Essence to gain 0 to 10 Super Geno points randomly. What a shame. Han Sen sighed at his inability to obtain another beast soul. The Devil-Eye Spider's body decomposed in a jiffy, leaving behind a life Geno Essence in its stead. This was unlike the little spider he had previously killed, whose disfigured, bolt-ridden body was still stuck in the mud. Han Sen walked close to the little spider and picked up the Z steel bolts from its body. He had 14 Z steel bolts, the ones he had requested from the Wang family. It was the most they could craft for him. Raw Z steel was too rare, and for the amount necessary to craft bolts, doubly so. Han Sen had received a life Geno Essence from the little spider's body, but while Han Sen wasn't looking, the silver fox quickly ran over to gobble its corpse up. You little prick. I was going to use that to feed a pet beast soul. It was too late for Han Sen to retrieve the body, but he was just bluffing. He wanted the silver fox to grow, and he hoped the meal might help accelerate its painfully slow growth. Compared to the fairy who never listened, the silver fox was far more appreciated and all-around useful. Han Sen held the little spider's life Geno Essence in his hand. He simulated its energy flow and refined it within him. The crystal in his hand was quickly absorbed. Devil-Eye Spider Baby consumed. 1 Super Geno point gained. The announcement continued to echo inside Han Sen's head as a cooling sensation entered his body, blending with his cells. His eyes felt especially invigorated. When the cooling sensation became one with his cells, his eyes felt light and refreshed. When the announcements came to an end, the number had settled on 8 Super Geno points. This brought his total tally of Super Geno points up to 44. Almost halfway. Han Sen was pumped. When Han Sen looked into the distance, he felt as if his vision had improved. When he brought out his mirror to look at his eyes, the pupils seemed darker, and it also seemed as if a halo resided deep within. The eyes were not unlike obsidian, and they were infinitely charming. The Devil-Eye Spider's power must be in its eyes. It's a shame I never got to see it in action, by one hit killing the thing. Although he thought this, he was still feeling good. Thinking of the little angel, not being afraid of the Devil-Eye Spider's power, he grew even fonder of her. Although she did not possess any special abilities, the little angel was tough and able to withstand everything thrown at her thus far. She was a remarkable pet to have. I wonder, if she went to the third god's sanctuary, what powers might she achieve upon evolving once more? Han Sen wanted to wait for the little angel to evolve again, but he imagined it would next happen in the third god's sanctuary. After the silver fox gobbled up the spider's flesh, it looked a little tired. It returned to Han Sen's shoulder but did not move. It closed its eyes as if it were sleeping. Han Sen could sense that inside the silver fox's body, its life force was in a little bit of turmoil as it tried to digest the flesh of the spider. After watching it for a while, the silver fox didn't seem to be in any dire trouble. So, Han Sen picked up the big Devil-Eye Spider's life Geno Essence. But holding the life Geno Essence, a new thought cropped up in Han Sen's mind. The big Devil-Eye Spider is still a Devil-Eye Spider. What if I am able to absorb the life Geno Essence by simulating the energy flow of its offspring? Han Sen believed it made sense, so he did as he thought. He simulated the baby Devil-Eye Spider's energy flow and tried to absorb the life Geno Essence. As he began casting the simulated energy flow, the green life Geno Essence began to rumble. Then, it was absorbed into his body and refined into his cells slowly. Han Sen's eyes felt even cooler now, and he felt as if they possessed a greater agility. Devil-Eye Spider consumed. 1 Super Geno point gained. The familiar voice rung again in his head. With exuberant joy, he thought to himself, it worked. This will save me a lot of time further down the road. If I can kill the whole family of snow turtles, heaven knows how many Super Geno points I'll increase all at once. But Han Sen quickly hit a snag. The announcement rung twice, which meant he had only managed to obtain 2 Super Geno points. It was much less than the small Devil Eye Spider's life Geno essence. Strange. If there was an immunity build-up for obtaining Super Geno points from the same breed of creature, I shouldn't have reached the limit so quickly. Han Sen frowned as he thought of this possibility. The first-generation super creature life Geno essence was very limited in the increases in power it bestowed. It couldn't compare to if he was in the third god sanctuary. Right now, he needed a second-generation life Geno essence. Well, 2 points are better than none, I suppose. Han Sen was overall quite content with the result. But if his theory was indeed correct, it swayed Han Sen's resolve somewhat. If he went to the third god sanctuary, he would have to slay third-generation creatures to quickly increase his Geno points. This would, of course, be something he'd have to deal with a long time from now. And Han Sen decided to cross that bridge when he came to it, as he was too lazy to deeply contemplate whatever lay far ahead. Focusing on being the best in the present, right now, was the best choice. Han Sen noticed the fairy emerge from the scallop shell, and it appeared as if she had just woken up. Han Sen was getting rather annoyed by her company, as all she did was eat valuable consumables and be lazy. Aside from acting cute, she didn't do anything. She'd wait until battles were over before coming out, and she didn't at all treat him as if he were her real master. If he wanted to get rid of the fairy, Han Sen was concerned he'd have to do it the hard way. But he was unsure whether or not he could beat her. But then, Han Sen suddenly thought of the Devil Eye Spider's power he had just been bestowed. Han Sen tried to simulate the Devil Eye Spider's energy flow, and he felt different. A cold air exuded from his eyes. "Little baby, come and look here." Han Sen smiled, opened his hands flat, and called upon the fairy to come. The fairy casually landed where she was bid to. When she looked upon him, she began to rub her eyes. Han Sen's eyes looked strange all of a sudden. He stared at the fairy, and when she looked into them, she appeared confused. Even her own eyes now looked strange, appearing empty. "Haha, little fairy. Now, let's see how I intend to get rid of you." Han Sen was laughing in his heart, and as he did so, he raised his devilish hand above the fairy. Han Sen's hand hadn't come down on the fairy yet, but suddenly, the little fairy blew frosty air towards his face. Ice and frost accumulated on his eyebrows, and he shivered from the sudden cold. The fairy stuck her tongue out at Han Sen and laughed. "Gah, how dare you trick me?" Han Sen tried to grab the fairy, but she quickly returned to the safety of her scallop shell. From inside its transparent casing, she gave him a mocking face. There was nothing he could do now except return the scallop shell to his pocket. It doesn't seem as if this skill works on fairies. Han Sen felt fairly bad, but he resolved to test out the skill on someone else when he left this place. For the time being, however, Han Sen decided to examine the Devil Eye Spider Beast Soul. Devil Eye Spider, Mask-type Beast Soul. Han Sen was surprised. Mask-type Beast Souls were remarkably rare, and not particularly useful either. Ordinarily, masked Beast Souls could increase your face's defense, and that was it. But this was a masked soul that belonged to a super creature, and he wondered whether or not it might prove to be something rather useful. After all, the Devil Eye Spiders didn't seem to have much defense. Therefore, Han Sen did not think it was the type of masked Beast Soul you might normally receive. Han Sen summoned the Devil Eye Spider's Beast Soul, and when he did, a strange blue mask appeared upon his face. It was strange and creepy, and it resembled a spider that had sprouted golden wings. The wings shielded the eyes, whereas the body of the spider covered the nose. Aside from that, the rest of his face was exposed. It didn't seem very defensive, and what's more, it obscured his vision. As Han Sen wore it, his vision was tinted blue. Whenever he saw a living creature, it appeared red. It was very much like a thermal imaging tool. It really isn't a defensive mask. What's it for, then? Han Sen took a look at the silver fox who was lying on his shoulder, and the little thing appeared red as if it was on fire. Looking into the distance to peer at the green-headed flies, he saw them as specks of red that were faint and difficult to make out. Han Sen used the mask for quite some time and got a fairly decent grasp on what the mask's benefits ultimately would be. With this mask, you could view the strength of a creature's life force, but you could only see the life force, and that was it. The Dongxian aura was still better because it could observe the energy flow as well. Still, it would prove fairly useful. Unlike the Dongxian aura, which was limited to its active radius, the mask adhered to the complete reach of his eyesight. This is a Devil Eye Spider Bee soul, so I wonder if there might be any enhancements if I run the Devil Eye Spider energy flow alongside its usage. Han Sen then went on to simulate the Devil Eye Spider's energy flow. His eyes felt mesmerizingly cool, and he felt that coolness go towards his mask. His vision suddenly became much stronger, and the distance to which he could see had greatly improved. Furthermore, he could make out all manner of details for distant objects unlike ever before. Han Sen wanted to test the extent of its vision enhancements, and when he did, he was shocked. He was able to observe every single hair on a fly that was 1 kilometer away.
Han Sen lo vid it.
This thing is far greater than a pair of binoculars. It's just a shame that the vision is limited to blue and red, Han Sen thought to himself. Then, he pulled the scallop shell out of his pocket. He looked at the fairy and cast the Devil Eye Spider's energy flow. The fairy, as soon as she saw Han Sen, stuck out her tongue at him once more. But upon looking him in the eye, her face suddenly became tinged with confusion. Get out! Han Sen used his willpower to command the fairy to exit the safety of her shell. And then, the fairy slowly opened the shell. But she only opened it halfway before snapping out of her daze and closing it immediately. She looked at Han Sen with much shock, then turned around to avoid making eye contact with him. It works! Han Sen had grown really fond of the mask he received. If he could confuse a super creature such as the fairy, then it had to be remarkably powerful. But despite the grand reward he had managed to obtain, Han Sen was a greedy person. He returned to the beehive with a keen interest into what else he might claim on this outing. The flies seemed to have snapped out of their mind control following the spider's death. They no longer bothered the beehive, and instead made their way back to the swamp. Aside from the golden-winged bees and the green fly corpses that littered the ground, the hive seemed to have gone back to normal operation. When night fell, the bee king went back to its routine. It emerged from the beehive and collected the honey that oozed out from the Chinese rose. Han Sen could still not figure out what this activity was for. Still, he had come up with a plan. The following night, he would command the little angel to gather the honey on his behalf. After the next day came and went, Han Sen made his preparations and got into position. With the little angel ready to go, he saw the king bee make its routine exit. Strangely, however, the bee king looked different on this day. The claws of the bee king seemed to be in possession of something. It was an object that was shiny like gold, luminous jewelry. Han Sen took a closer look and noticed it was some sort of bee crystal. Weird. Why is the bee king carrying this bee crystal thing? Han Sen was now confused, and so he didn't summon the little angel as he had planned to. All he did was watch. The weather was nice that night. The moon was big and bright in the sky, in complete fullness. The bee king maintained its hold on the bee crystal as it began circling the top of the hill. Eventually, it placed the bee crystal down near the flower and returned to the hive. Not long later, the bee king came out again. In its wriggly hands, it was holding another bee crystal. It placed it down on the same spot it had placed the previous crystal. This occurred 5 times in total, and now 5 of those bee crystals were left exposed on the top of the hill. The bee king returned its hive after this and did not return. Han Sen thought it was a most curious sight, and he had no idea what the bee king was doing. He looked at the other golden-winged bees and noticed that they had all retreated to the beehive and showed no sign of returning to the outside either. Amidst this confusion, Han Sen suddenly heard a strange noise coming from someplace in the sea of flowers. It seemed as if something was approaching. Han Sen turned around to take a look, and he managed to espy the presence of something crawling inside the bushes. Due to the obscuring leaves and relative darkness, he couldn't make out who or what it was, however. The flowers that populated the area grew close to the ground. If something was crawling around out of sight, it couldn't have been all that big. At the very most, Han Sen imagined, it would be a small snake or something. If it were any bigger, the flowers wouldn't aid in keeping it out of sight. Now, this intruder was making a beeline for the hill. And that was when Han Sen caught sight of what it truly was, a baby silkworm that was half-transparent. It was indeed fairly small, and its body was like a silver crystal. It climbed atop the hill and approached the flower there. The bees beneath the hill made no move to attack it. The silkworm baby proudly mounted the hill and wriggled around the flower in circles. It wasn't long before it took notice of the 5 bee crystals and, believing no one to be watching it, began nibbling them. It is difficult to be a bee in this place. First, they are attacked by an army of flies commanded by a spider, so that their cocoons are stolen. And now, they must give an offering of crystals to a bug. Insects may live a hard life, but this takes the cake. Their mistreatment is almost upsetting. Han Sen now understood that the bees had been working hard to produce an offering of edible crystals to an extortionist bug. Free lunch in trade for protection. If the bee king feared the bug, then it undoubtedly had to be something quite powerful. Han Sen used his new mask to take a look at it, and he was startled to see its body flaming hot. It was far more powerful than the silver fox, but not too far off the bee king. Han Sen didn't understand why it was so threatening to the bee king, though. How could that bug compel the bee king to work tirelessly to produce an offering of such crystals? It didn't look all that much stronger than the bee king, and with the backup of its bee army, the king shouldn't have had too much trouble in running the little bug off. But now, all the bees must have been cowering inside their hive, afraid of the bug outside munching on all the fruits of their labor. Is this guy really that powerful? Han Sen used his Dongxian aura to scan it. He witnessed the bug's body refine the crystals it ate. It's only a second-generation super creature. The little angel should be far stronger than that little thing. Han Sen was even more confused, seeing this. He had no idea why this bug was some sort of mafia insect boss. Within the hour, the silkworm baby had managed to gobble up all 5 of the crystals. But after eating them, it did not leave. Instead, it remained atop the hill producing strange sounds. Not long after, the bee king flew out and looked at the bug with great trepidation. The bug made a few more noises, to which the bee king responded angrily. It flapped its wings faster than usual, as a display of this. Han Sen was not sure what to think of anymore, and no witty comments came to mind. He had been there for days, watching bees live their lives. And now, he was watching a bee king communicate with a worm. The bee king, despite its apparent anger, conceded to whatever demands had been made. After some sort of deal was struck, the bee king returned to the hive. Upon its return a little later, it was carrying another 3 of those crystals to the bug. But this did not satisfy the bug either, and it made wretched screeches in response. Arrogantly, it hopped on a rock and screamed even louder. It was like some gangster demanding a bigger drop. Han Sen thought the tether of the bee king's patience would finally snap, and a fight between the two would commence. But the bee king conceded to the demands once more, and brought out another 3 bee crystals. It dropped them off in front of the bug. The little bug now looked satisfied. It climbed down off the rock and went back to nibbling the bee crystals. The bee king looked disheartened. It looked so incredibly sad, submitting to the demands of its bully. Slowly, it retreated to the beehive. Where does that little squirt come from? How can he get the bee king to behave like this? Does it have a bigger, badder daddy grub or something? Is that why it can do as it pleases? Han Sen's mind began to work. If the silkworm did indeed have friends, then he figured he could waste those one by one until only the elder remained. If it had the same energy flow, Han Sen figured he could absorb the life geno-essences of an entire family of creatures. The bug ate 4 more of the bee crystals before it felt full. Its belly was round and puffed like a ball. Sick! The bug called out once more, and Han Sen believed it to be calling out the bee king. But it wasn't. Silk began to pour out of the bug's mouth. It built up until it had wholly cocooned itself. Is this thing a little baby? Is it now transforming into an adult? Han Sen's face looked puzzled. If he guessed it correctly, Han Sen knew why the bee king was so afraid of it. If it was already that powerful as a baby, heaven knew how powerful it would become once it had fully grown. That was why the bee king was so afraid of it and was willing to obey its every command. I have to kill this thing. Just when Han Sen decided to do this, he used his Dongxian aura to scan the cocoon. He stopped in his tracks. The energy flow inside the cocoon was changing. It was morphing into something different from what he recalled earlier, and it was an ongoing process. It was like there were two different energy flows inside the cocoon. That was why Han Sen pulled back and wasn't sure whether or not to advance just yet. If he killed the bug now, and the energy flow he had learnt would not work, he'd incur a great loss. Han Sen hesitated a little and did not strike. He continued to watch the energy flow change, learning every step as it went. The energy inside the cocoon had changed a lot, and overnight, it had become something completely different. Han Sen wouldn't have believed a tale such as this to be true had he not seen it with his own two eyes. Two completely separate energy flows were now occupying the same super creature. What could this thing possibly be turning into? Han Sen had become incredibly curious, but as dawn broke the following morning, the energy finished its morph, and it seemed as if the creature inside had finished evolving. When the sun rose in the east, the cocoon cracked open. Han Sen witnessed a silver-winged butterfly struggling to pry itself free from the thick hide of the cocoon. The cocoon was incredibly sturdy, and breaking it completely was sure to be a trying task. The silver butterfly could only poke its head through the opening, as its body and wings were still deep inside. Han Sen's heart jumped, and he quickly summoned the little angel. With his peacock crossbow, he repeatedly fired towards the silver butterfly. If he didn't kill it now, it'd be much harder once it fully exited the cocoon. This was sure to be the best chance he would get. The butterfly had only just finished evolving, and the creature wouldn't have adapted to its new body yet. And now, stuck inside the cocoon, there truly could not be a greater chance. Whoosh! A Z-steel bolt struck the silver butterfly's head. It only created a shallow mark, and it was already quite clear how much stronger this creature was than the devil-eye spider. But after that strike, the silver butterfly cried out in pain. It struggled to remove itself from the cocoon at a more hurried pace. But now, the little angel had arrived before it, and she brought down her mighty greatsword on the creature's head. The silver butterfly was still stuck inside the cocoon, and it had not even managed to free one of its claws yet. It seemed to try to roll with the cocoon to dodge the incoming attack, but it couldn't do it in time, and the greatsword was brought down directly on its head. Blood squirted from the cleft. Although the little angel's greatsword was much stronger than Han Sen's crossbow and bolt, it didn't deal fatal damage. In fact, the total damage dealt was small, and its head was nowhere close to being hewn off. Before the butterfly evolved, it was a self-asserted boss that extorted others. Never had it been humiliated as it was being now. It was visibly frustrated, fuming with anger, and it exerted far more effort in its attempt to squirm free from the hold of the cocoon.
Young, young, young.
The little angel struck the butterfly's head in the exact same spot another 3 times, which left behind a deep wound. But the silver butterfly was tough, and even that wasn't enough to kill it.
Young.
The little angel slashed again, but by now, one of the butterfly's claws had managed to break free from the cocoon. It blocked the sword with the loud sound of clashing metals. Evidently, the sword could not deal damage to its claws. Han Sen rushed before the emerging butterfly with a fusion of sonic and thunder power growling within him. With a charged fist, he threw it down upon the butterfly's head. The lightning shone like a silver sun as it was driven into the butterfly's chrome dome. The energy flow inside the creature was grievously disturbed, and the lightning stunned it into a state of paralysis. The little angel took advantage of this window to get in a few more hits on the butterfly's head wound. From the wretched area of damage, much blood began to gush. It seemed as if half of its head had been carved away by now. But even in such a state, the silver butterfly was not willing to submit to the hold of death. With greater pushes, it seemed close to escaping the trapping of its cocoon. It looked up and screamed towards Han Sen and the little angel. Han Sen's eyes flashed, and a blue light activated on his devil-eye mask. Instantly, it stunned the raging butterfly. In that moment, little angel was granted the opportunity to throw in a few additional attacks. She managed to cleave another portion of the silver butterfly's head away and put it into a state that would eventually lead to its death. Without granting the silver butterfly any more wriggle room to escape the cocoon, the little angel hewed the remainder of its head to the ground. Super creature silver-winged holy butterfly killed.
No beast soul gun.
Eat the flesh to gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. You may also harvest its life geno essence. Consume its life geno essence to gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. Han Sen was overjoyed. He wasted no further time and quickly summoned his little bluebell. He wanted it to absorb the butterfly's blood without letting any go to waste. After the death knell absorbed the silver-winged holy butterfly's blood, the symbols etched across its body were even clearer. It looked likely to evolve soon. Han Sen watched it intently, but when nothing happened, returned it. Han Sen dug a small silver crystal out of the butterfly's corpse. This was the life geno essence. Han Sen then picked up the whole corpse of the silver butterfly. Humans could not eat the bodies of super creatures, and there were no pets to feed it to. Therefore, he resolved to bring it back with him for the time being. Just as Han Sen decided to leave, he turned to see himself surrounded by a large army of bees led by the Bee King himself. This soured his mood a little, and he thought to himself, "You bastards! That bug practically forced you into slavery, and it made you lose your nads. Do you think the guy who killed that butterfly is any weaker than it? And you want to come out and bully me, huh? Is that it?" Just as he thought these things and prepared to command the little angel to battle the bees, he saw the Bee King holding a number of gold, shiny crystals in its hands. It then placed 5 bee crystals down in front of Han Sen before circling him with apparent glee. Han Sen may not have spoken the language of bees, but he could guess that the bee was looking to repay him for the service of protection he had unwittingly provided. Smart move. I was just about to destroy your hive. Such intelligence needs to be rewarded, and I'll allow you to remain alive on the account of the smarts you seem to possess. The next time I return, you better make sure to have some bee crystals ready-made for me. Okay. Han Sen took the bee crystals and thought to go, in no mood for any further fighting. Killing first-generation super creatures wasn't very beneficial, and the chance of obtaining a beast soul was far too low as it was, anyway. Since he had been given such a handsome reward, he thought it would be best if he did not provoke the bees any further. There were too many of them, anyway, and killing the king would have proved to be quite the challenge. Han Sen, crystals in hand, took his leave. During his travel, he made sure to absorb the butterfly's life geno essence. But there appeared to be some sort of trouble with doing so. Despite simulating the silver butterfly's energy flow, he couldn't absorb it successfully. After switching to simulate the energy flow of the silkworm, he was able to make some sort of absorption progress. Strangely, he could only absorb half of it. Han Sen simulated the butterfly's energy flow once again to absorb the rest, and this worked. After it was fully absorbed, he was pleased to receive 9 super geno points in total. To get that many points from a single life geno essence was incredibly rare. That silver-winged butterfly is rather interesting. I wonder what the purpose of those 2 different energy flows really were. But Han Sen was in no place to commit to research right now, and neither did he want to spare the time. Onwards he went, to exit the Sea of Flowers. On his return trip, he didn't bump into Jingjiwu again. He wasn't sure where he might have gone to, but Han Sen really liked that man. Back in the shelter, while Han Sen thought about what he might do with the butterfly's body, Lin Beifeng happily approached him. "Here you are. I have this for you." Lin Beifeng gave Han Sen a rectangular box. The box was just an ordinary platinum box by the looks of it, but when he opened it, he was delivered quite the shock. He turned his head to Lin Beifeng and said, "Z-Steel Raw Stone?" Han Sen wasn't entirely sure if this truly was Z-Steel Raw Stone because of its massive size. It was rare to see a 1-foot-long raw stone, one which he could use to produce more bolts. But this one in the box was 2 feet long and 3 fingers wide. Although the shape was not entirely straight, it might have been enough to produce a dagger or even shortsword. A Z-Steel Raw Stone such as that was the best gift he could receive. It was far greater than the Z-Steel bolts the Wang family had given him, for sure. You have a good eye. Few people can recognize something like this. I had prepared a speech of explanation and everything. I had no clue you knew all about it already. Lin Beifeng let out a hearty chuckle, and then proceeded to say, "Keep it. Consider this payment for the services you have provided me and the 2 beast souls you gave me. But don't tell anyone you receive this as a gift from me. If you do, I'll play dumb and won't admit a thing." Han Sen closed the box and pushed it back to Lin Beifeng. With a serious voice, he said, "This thing is far too precious for you to give me. The beast souls I gave you are nowhere near as valuable as this. You should keep it." Han Sen knew the price a chunk of Z-steel raw stone such as this could fetch. The weapons it could be used to create would not be any worse than superclass weaponry, either. If it was forged by a great blacksmith, that was. Han Sen actually felt as if he had taken too much of an advantage of Lin Beifeng and felt rather sorry. Trading such an item for 2 sacred blood beast souls was far too much. Lin Beifeng did not take it back, however. He merely smiled and said, "Where this came from was strange. I haven't dared use it, and I have been unable to find anyone willing to forge it into something on my behalf. It would be useless for me to hold on to it, so you might as well accept it. You'll put it to good use. If you still feel bad about such a trade, then how about you offer me another 2 sacred blood beast souls?" "What do you mean strange? Is there a problem with this?" Han Sen did not push the box back any further as he asked, "I'll be honest with you. I dug it up myself. You can't ask me any more than that. Just find someone you trust to forge it into something you can use. Keep its origins a secret and don't tell anyone about my involvement with it." Lin Beifeng once again made sure to remind Han Sen, "Okay, I'll accept it. If you do want another beast soul, just tell me and I will give it to you." Han Sen was always fond of shorter weaponry, so this stone was of much value to him. "You are welcome. But if you have a humanoid transformation beast soul, I would gladly receive one of those. Or perhaps even a powerful possession beast soul. Those would be great." Saliva drooled from the corners of Lin Beifeng's lips. Han Sen gave a 2-fingered salute to Lin Beifeng, as those were things he wanted, as well. Han Sen brought the raw stone back to the Alliance, and got in contact with the Wang family so they could forge something out of it. The ordinary tools he possessed would not be sufficient. After sorting things out there, he gave Ji Yanran a call. She was free this day, and that meant they could eat together.
Han Sen's heart suddenly jumped.
And with an evil smile, he thought to himself, "Later, I can try this out on her." That night, after having dinner with Ji Yanran, Han Sen brought her over to the sofa. With great excitement, he said, "Dear, I have recently come into the possession of a superpower. It's pretty amazing. What superpower would that be?" Ji Yanran looked at Han Sen with curiosity. In those days, it had become common for humans to achieve superpowers. But as for one that could make Han Sen this excited, she couldn't fathom how grand it might be. Earnestly, she wanted to know. Han Sen, acting all mystically, leaned over and whispered into her ear, "Magnetism." When Ji Yanran heard this, she was surprised. She responded by saying, "How do you do that? Can evolvers really do something like that?" This power was not very rare amongst surpassers, but for evolvers, it was a nigh unbelievable power for one to achieve. After all, evolvers did not have the power to cast out metaphysical forces. "Don't rush this. I'm not done. My magnetism is different than what you might be thinking of. Come, stand here." Han Sen pulled Ji Yanran to a wall adjacent to the sofa. Then, he went to sit back down. "What are you doing?" Ji Yanran asked curiously. "You stand there while I sit here. Do you believe I can reach out my hand and compel your panties to abandon your legs and join me? I can promise you that it won't hurt and that the fabric won't break, either." Han Sen said these words with a tone of strange seriousness. "What twisted scheme have you gotten into your head this time?" Ji Yanran did not believe a word he had said, and according to his description of the skill, it wouldn't exactly be defined as magnetism. To do what he was saying would be more akin to teleportation. This was a power few surpassers could manage to obtain. If Han Sen was just an evolver, it'd be impossible for him to achieve something like that. "I'm asking you if you believe me." Han Sen asked her again seriously.
No.
Ji Yanran lifted her lips and watched Han Sen with caution. She knew he was about to perform some sordid prank. Han Sen smiled and said, "Well, how about we spice things up and have a bit of a wager going then? If I can do it, you can bite me." Why would I want to? Ji Yanran didn't even finish her sentence before starting to blush. When she regained her composure, she said, I am not falling into this trap you have set up.
No.
As soon as she said this, she began walking towards him. To this, Han Sen smiled and said, That means you believe I can remove your panties from 3 meters away?
No.
God knows what trick you are trying to play on me. Ji Yanran was not a dumb woman, and she wouldn't believe in something she had yet to see proven possible. If you don't believe it, then take me up on the wager. That is, unless you lack confidence in your own judgment. Han Sen gave her a smirk and then went on to say, How can you be a captain if you lack confidence in yourself? Ji Yanran knew Han Sen was just trying to get under her skin and get her to go along with his planned jest, but she looked as if she really didn't want to partake. She nibbled her lips and said, Are you sure you won't come close? If my ass leaves this sofa, I lose, Han Sen replied immediately. And you aren't going to tear my clothing? Ji Yanran looked down at her body. She was wearing a white military uniform, white pants, white top, and white boots. It didn't seem possible for Han Sen to so simply remove her panties. I won't just plead to not tear your clothing. Even if I was to mess up one single hair on your pretty little head, I would lose, Han Sen said with confidence. You aren't going to use tools, are you? Ji Yanran still believed Han Sen was planning to do something unethical. My good wife, I will sit here and not move an inch, and I will use my hand to remove your panties while you stand there, 3 meters away from me. If I succeed, and you think I have done something bad, you may cancel the bet. Is that okay with you? Han Sen opened his empty hands as he said this. Okay, sit there and we'll see how you manage to grab my panties. Ji Yanran firmly disbelieved in Han Sen's ability to do something like this. Watch this. My Han family's sacred skill, Ultra Panty Raid. Han Sen looked so serious when he yelled this out, and as he spoke aloud, he threw out his empty and lecherous hands. Ji Yanran stared at Han Sen's hands without blinking. If he employed any tiny trick, she would be ready to expose him. As her vision moved, she looked him in the eye. Ultra Panty Raid. Han Sen shouted out at the top of his lungs, flailing his arms in a manner as if to pretend he was indeed grabbing them. As Ji Yanran looked Han Sen in the eyes, her own eyes began to look empty and confused. She opened them wide, standing where she was. Take off your panties and hand them to me. Han Sen giggled as he made the command from the comfort of the sofa. Ji Yanran complied with the order, and she began removing her white pants. Then, Han Sen was able to view her long, white, succulent legs and white panties. Seeing Ji Yanran remove them slowly, Han Sen couldn't help but gulp. Before tonight's happy hour, he had to restrain himself from any further thoughts down that lustful road. Fortunately, Ji Yanran's top was quite long, and it obscured what was below her waist. Ji Yanran then took off her panties and delivered them into Han Sen's lewd, grabby hands. And as she came over, he couldn't help but give her bubbly but a tight squeeze. Then, he commanded her to put her clothes back on. Ji Yanran listened and heeded the command at once. She returned to the wall, dressed up neatly again and stood there as she did earlier. Han Sen's eyes returned to normal, and when they did, the life in Ji Yanran's eyes returned as well. Panties. Han Sen, panties in hand, blasted with his voice. And it was at that moment Ji Yanran snapped out of her daze. Ji Yanran had no idea she had been under Han Sen's control. She believed she had continued to stare at him without a single break, and yet despite that, she was now seeing panties in his hands. Her face changed at the sight. She reached to feel below, and despite her pants being on, the panties had disappeared. How did you do that? Ji Yanran looked at Han Sen as if she had seen a ghost. It does not matter how I did it. What matters is that you lost. Han Sen threw away the panties and stood up. Slowly, he walked in front of Ji Yanran. He picked her up and threw her on the sofa.
No.
You cheated. Ji Yanran's face was red, and she used her hands to prevent Han Sen from getting closer. I knew you would slander me. Don't take it out on me, and do not complain about what happens next. Han Sen's eyes were filled with a curious light, and he went back to controlling her. Oh yeah, how about this? Han Sen turned on a video to teach Ji Yanran how to strip dance. Then, he told her, do what she does. Ji Yanran was normally quite shy and reserved. Whenever she had sex with Han Sen, she wouldn't even turn the light on. And if Han Sen turned it on, she would curl up in embarrassment and become utterly shy. There was no other possible circumstance that would lead to her doing what she was about to. And now, she was exactly like the lady in the video. She twirled and twisted around as she removed every garment. Yes, he's. Han Sen's eyes were wide open. He was extremely excited right now. Ji Yanran's body was far better than the one in the video, and as he watched, his nose felt hot. He thought he'd be gushing blood any minute now. As Han Sen watched from his seat on the sofa, Ji Yanran danced towards him. Her white top had already been taken off by this point, revealing her slender waist and large breasts, cupped by the caress of her bra in a tantalizing tease. Ji Yanran twirled her sexy waist and twerked her spongy bubble butt. She leaned forward over Han Sen as she did this, her hands slowly beginning to unclip her bra and free her eager boobs. Take it off. Take it off. Han Sen's eyes were wide open, seeing the woman before him with black hair, red lips, and skin that was pale as snow. Han Sen's eyes were tugged towards the plush warmth of her boobies. Ouch! Just as the bra was about to fall and divulge the complete spectacle of her chest, Han Sen was punched in the head. One of Ji Yanran's hands held her gravity-submitting bra, while the other hand clenched a fist. Big pervert. I knew you weren't nice. How dare you hypnotize me? If I could be put under such a spell, it wouldn't be one wrought by your weak mind. When Ji Yanran said that, she squeezed Han Sen's cheeks as hard as she could. This devil-eye spider ability is useless. Han Sen felt fairly bad, but when he looked at Ji Yanran's face, she looked extremely cocky at having bested him. Behaving more rudely and forthwith, he pulled her directly into his arms. He grabbed her bra and tore it away. Let me go, you pervert. Ji Yanran's eyes were ones of absolute confusion. Her face was red with the swelling blush, but it added to her charm. How dare you lie to me? I will teach you the Han family discipline. Han Sen could no longer hold his restraint, and so he leapt on top of her.
No.
Inside the room, a pleasurable few hours unfolded. The walls vibrated as the springs of the sofa were worked hard. At midnight, Han Sen was finally satisfied. Then, he brought her to his bed. Surprisingly, Ji Yanran was quite cooperative, and the extent of their exercise had almost worn Han Sen out completely. Han Sen curiously asked why his attempt at hypnotizing her failed. Her response was that she had received training, ever since she was small, to resist falling prey to such tricks. She had also absorbed a crystal from the crystallizers to strengthen her mind. Ordinary attempts of hypnotization were useless on her. Now that Han Sen was aware of this, his plans for using the Devil-Eye Spider's energy flow to gain some sort of advantage in the alliance didn't seem as viable. Many of the priority figures of the big families must have undergone the same sort of training. Using this method to manipulate the wills and whims of others wouldn't be as effective as Han Sen had initially hoped. All he could do, at best, was confuse them for a few seconds. Absolute, prolonged control of their minds would be impossible. Your hypnotizing skill is already quite powerful. Even the Huangfu family, who are the most talented at this sort of thing, aren't much better. Ji Yanran had noticed Han Sen's sudden disappointment, so she issued a few words of comfort. Huangfu? Which Huangfu family? Han Sen asked with surprise. What are you talking about? Which other Huangfu family could it be? It's the Huangfu family. The one from the Ares Martial Hall, Ji Yanran said. They are proficient with hypnosis? I thought they only excelled with their heavenly go, Han Sen asked, as this revelation surprised him. He believed the Huangfu family were only in possession of powerful fighting abilities, not ones of deceit and distortion. How else do you think the Huangfu family can enlist as many students as they do? Do you think they convince others through a display of their power alone? They have a history of researching, learning, adopting, and using various mind tricks. They could very well be the best in the alliance at that sort of thing. Heavenly Go does not belong to them, and only 2 people know it. Anyway, the skill is not theirs, Ji Yanran explained. Han Sen then remembered the time that the Chun family had told him of their ownership of Heavenly Go. It was one half of a set that also included 7 twists. Somehow, the Huangfu family had come into possession of Heavenly Go. If I have time, maybe I can go and talk about it with Sister Huangfu, Han Sen casually said. When Ji Yinran heard this, she grabbed Han Sen's ear and angrily exclaimed, "You are not allowed to see her." "Why?" Han Sen strained to say, under agonizing pain. "You are simply not allowed. There is no why." Ji Yinran nibbled her lips. Han Sen, seeing her beautiful face, quickly turned her over. Another storm raged. Inside the sanctuary, a man ascended a mountain. After he reached the halfway point, a group of men barred his passage and prevented further travel. "Friend, do you know what this place is?" The leader, with a scar across his face, coldly laughed at the man. "I do not know." The man raised his head and cast a glance back towards the scarred man. The scarred man now saw the other's face clearly. He looked young and possessed a baby face, but one that was partially veiled by a bushy mustache. His eyes were honest and large, and when you saw them, maintaining a front of intimidation became much more difficult. The scarred man's face appeared softer, and so he calmly said, "This is Heaven Valley. It is the territory of our angel shelter. Your uninhibited passage can be granted for the price of 1 mutant beast soul." "But I do not have any mutant beast souls," the baby-faced man said in response. "Then you will have to traverse a portion of the Black Desert or scale Death Mountain," the scarred man told the traveler. Heaven Valley possessed the only fair-footed throughway to where he wished to go. It was skirted by Death Mountain and the Black Desert on either side. If you could not traverse this road, any detour would take many more months. Death was much more likely to find those who ventured in such treacherous places. "But that will take a long time," the baby-faced man said. "Is this the face of concern? If you want to continue this way, hand over a mutant beast soul," the man with a scar on his face said. "Well, what about if I kill you? What if I killed you all? If I did that, would I still be required to pay? Or would this toll of yours be forfeit?" The baby-faced man looked upon the other and spoke with a stern, serious face. "Ha ha ha." Scarface and those that accompanied him did not take the threat seriously, and so they all burst out laughing. Angel Shelter belonged to Angel Jean, otherwise known as the Zhao family. Any that sought to venture there and offended them were either foolish or insane. They thought the baby-faced man did not even know what Angel Jean was, and they just believed him to be an arrogant and pitiable man. The next second, the baby-faced man waved his hand. As he did so, an invisible blade shot through the air. He began stepping forward, and as each foot returned to the ground, a person's head was launched through the air. By the time the baby-faced man had managed to pass their roadblock, none were left alive. They all lay dead, scattered and crumpled on the ground. "I am not fond of killing, but I have antipathy of trouble. I am sorry for this." The baby-faced man's eyes still looked clean, not dirty or tainted with the regret or pleasure of murder. Onwards through Heaven Valley he went. Han Sen reviewed the information he had received from Ji Yinran concerning the third god's sanctuary. It detailed which spirit shelters were known of, and what was known of them and their occupants. He read it over a few times, unable to find out anything about the spirit that took the white rhino away. The middle of Han Sen's forehead still contained the mark, and he was worried over the prospect of being teleported to that spirit's shelter upon his arrival in the third god's sanctuary. Humans had no control of where they spawned in the third god's sanctuary, and it was unknown whether or not such fates were determined by spirits. Han Sen's super geno point tally had reached 55, and it wouldn't be long before he maxed them out. Since he was nearing his ascension to the third god's sanctuary, he had to start thinking forward and figuring things out. If I really do end up in that spirit's shelter, I should obey as instructed. I only have this one life. Han Sen destroyed the information after finishing with it, and then continued to think, there are numerous pros and cons when accepting the contract of a spirit, but to be contracted by a low-level one would be pointless. However, if it was an ordinary shelter or a night shelter, there is the possibility I could escape to be free, or perhaps even claim it. He hadn't heard of any more super creatures existing in the area he was, so Han Sen decided to travel. He selected the faraway Sandow River as his next destination, for he had heard murmurs of fearsome monsters that inhabited it. To get there, he would have to traverse great swaths of forest. There was nothing more Han Sen desired in the second god's sanctuary, so all he fancied doing now was speeding up his acquisition of super Geno points to ascend to the third god's sanctuary. With the silver fox in tow, Han Sen journeyed through the forests until he reached the Sandow River area. There, he took in the sight of numerous lakes and rivers intertwined with each other. It was a grand freshwater place. There were many creatures living there, of many different breeds and species. Han Sen was making for the Emerald Lake, where people said a dinosaur-looking creature roamed. Many people had also seen it caring for a baby, too. After reaching the region, it wasn't long before Han Sen found a group of people fighting. At first, he thought they were a group of hunters taking on creatures of the area, but upon closer inspection, he saw that the human figures were in fact killing a man. Although the people looked very powerful, the man they sought to kill looked even scarier. Every time he unleashed a strike, someone was injured. But unfortunately for him, the numbers that surrounded him were too many. The fight appeared to have gone on for some time, as he was badly injured and drenched in blood. He didn't seem to be faring too well. Whoever dares challenge Angel Jean will be skinned alive. The leader of the group again ordered his people to kill the man. The fighters he was commanding didn't look well, either, and the face of the leader was flustered and angry. Angel Jean? When Han Sen heard this, his mind flashed. When Han Sen was once attacked by a strange bloodhorn Shura, he suspected Angel Jean as being most likely to want to hurt him. He had done some digging, in an attempt to uncover who wished him dead, but all the leads led to dead ends. Now, things seemed even more suspicious. Even if it wasn't them who had gone after him, Han Sen did not like Angel Jean. The man, surrounded by a legion of Angel Jean goons, didn't look like he deserved that treatment. He didn't look like a bad person at all. What the Angel Jean people were doing grated on Han Sen. Han Sen contemplated what to do for some time before coming to a decision. Eventually, he told the Silver Fox and Little Angel to leave the area for a while. He summoned his armor to look like Dollar and approached the Angel Jean people. Although he hated the people of Angel Jean, he couldn't risk conflict with them due to his identity and familial association. Therefore, he readopted his persona of Dollar. This is official Angel Jean business. Get lost. One of the Angel Jean yahoos shouted at him when Han Sen approached. Han Sen did not say anything before unleashing his elephant disc punch. When he punched the man, he went flying away in a haze of blood. Han Sen was not one who wanted to kill other people. What he wanted to do, more than anything, was save the person and ask what he had done to receive such harsh treatment. There had to be a reason, and although he despised Angel Jean, there was always the chance that the man who was surrounded actually deserved the treatment he was getting. Dollar. Seeing Han Sen approach, it did not take long for someone to recognize him. After all, he was more famous than ever. He was the first person to achieve the title Son of God in the second God's sanctuary. Dollar, Angel Jean has no conflict with you. Why rival us? The man shouted at Han Sen, clearly not desiring conflict with the revered Dollar. Han Sen did not answer. He merely ran forward, and like a parting sea, the others cleared a path for him to approach the injured man. Friend, follow me, Han Sen said to the man, forcing a rougher voice. Then, he turned and fled the scene. The Angel Jean henchmen were visibly angry, but they did not dare lift a finger to Han's senator, and without resistance, Han Sen was able to deliver the man safely from the area. If it had been anyone else, they'd definitely have fought back. But Dollar's reputation was too lofty, and they believed fighting him was asking for death. Boss, so many of our brothers have died to that man. Now, he has practically escaped. How are we to report this? Someone, who looked fairly disheartened, asked the leader. He did not want to be punished over what had happened. We will just report the truth. Dollar came to save him, and there was nothing we could do to oppose that man's desire. I am sure they will understand our reasoning. It is Dollar, after all, the man said, in a voice of confidence. After Han Sen departed the region and escaped successfully, the person he brought with him collapsed on the ground and fainted. Han Sen squatted to observe his wounds. He He was surprised the man was still able to fight that entire time, as his injuries were quite severe. His will to live and fight was incredibly powerful. Han Sen applied some medicine to his wounds and brought him deep into the woods, where no spying eyes could observe them. He wanted to ask the man what happened when he woke up. "You saved me?" When the guy woke up, he was neither in a state of shock or panic. His clear and bright eyes looked upon Han Sen. "Kind of." Han Sen checked the man out as he spoke. He had a pretty baby face that was adorned with a mustache. He wasn't sure what he was feeling, but Han Sen knew this was not the sort of person he'd soon forget. "Who do you want to kill?" the baby-faced man asked.
What?
Han Sen was surprised by the question, unsure of whether or not his ears had deceived him. After all, why would he ask such a question? "I owe you a life, and my talents lie in the taking of lives. If you wanted me to kill someone, I will do that as a return for the favor you have done me." The baby-faced man stopped moving. After a pause, he continued, "Of course, creatures can count for that equation too. What is your name?" Han Sen looked at the baby-faced man. "Luo-yin," the baby-faced man answered quickly. He didn't seem cold or ire-served. "Why have you gotten into a fight with the people from Angel Gene?"
Han Sen asked.
"Because I despise trouble." Luo-yin shrugged. Han Sen laughed and said, "If you are afraid of getting into trouble, you may have to study what is needed to avoid it. Hunting down members of Angel Gene is not how you stay out of trouble. I am not a smart person, so studying does not come easy." Luo-yin sighed. Han Sen thought the man was rather interesting, but he had yet to receive any concrete information from him. The guy was not just funny, as there was a depth to his character. He was not as simple as he was letting on. "You really are Dollar?" Luo-yin asked.
I suppose, Han Sen answered.
"It is a shame I have sustained such wounds. If I was in better condition, I would enjoy sparring with you," Luo-yin said. "You seem to have forgotten that you owe me one life."
Han Sen looked at Luo-yin.
"I have not said anything to contradict my prior pledge. If we fight and I beat you, but at the same time do not kill you, consider that a cash-in on the life I owe you," Luo-yin said, with surprising seriousness. "And what if you lose?" Han Sen was really interested in Luo-yin. "You can either kill me or spare me. If you spare my life, I will owe you too." Luo-yin answered the question directly and did not even pause for a brief moment before responding. Han Sen shook his head and with a wry smile said, "What are you doing here?" "I have come here to fight someone I cannot kill," Luo-yin replied. "You are an interesting fellow. If you cannot kill the person you seek to fight, why bother fighting him at all? You expect and accept loss?" Han Sen thought the person he had met was someone of great depth, and his persona was colored and textured with many layers of thoughtful contemplation. "I do not like killing people. To fight someone and lose may not be all that bad," Luo-yin said. "In that case, good luck." Although Han Sen considered the man with great interest, he did not want to engage in a pointless conversation such as this. He wanted information, and he wouldn't get any if he carried on like this. Han Sen stood up and prepared to leave. But Luo-yin, trembling, stood up and looked to follow. "Why are you following me?" Han Sen asked, as a queer tone coated his words. "I cannot leave something undone. I cannot leave a debt unpaid. I will follow you until you prepare a task for me. Once I have accomplished the deed you bid me to do, I will leave and pursue whatever endeavor I seek next," Luo-yin said. "Although I would like to fulfill your pledged obligation, there is no one here that can threaten me. It'll be some time before you can repay me."
Han Sen smiled.
"You are proud?" Luo-yin said, partly in question. "I have what it takes to be proud, don't I?"
Han Sen coldly sighed.
Luo-yin did not say anything further. Instead, he moved. Although he was heavily injured, his strike was incredibly steady. An invisible power departed his hands. Falsified sky power? Upon seeing the power, Han Sen's face changed. He was no longer a stranger to this force. Without hesitating, Han Sen threw a punch to collide with that power. The power of the Elephant Rex strike put the very atmosphere into a vortex of turmoil. But just as Han Sen's fist looked to touch the invisible power, it disappeared right before the collision. Before Han Sen noticed anything further, he was slashed across the chest. A sharp metal noise was produced. Han Sen was shocked, not knowing how he was hit. He could predict the falsified sky power, but his punch did not come into contact with it. He wasn't the only one surprised, however, as Luoyin looked visibly shocked as well. Although he hit Han Sen with all his might, it only left a light mark on his armor. He was going to say, "I could have beheaded you, but I did not. Consider the life I owe you repaid." But instead, there was only silence. He acknowledged his inability to slay Dollar, and as a result, could not so easily repay the life he owed. "Try again," Han Sen looked at Luoyin and told him. He knew Luoyin was not mad, and he knew for sure the strike was not supposed to kill him outright. But he wanted to know why he could not block it. The man's falsified sky power was different than what Luoli had exhibited. If you have heard of the falsified sky sutra, then you must know you cannot withstand my power. It conjures a strike that cannot miss, no matter how the sought recipient seeks to dodge. Luoyin felt awkward but continued to speak. "I cannot break your armor, however. It is useless, even if I manage to hit you. You were indeed correct. None can threaten you. Not here, not in the second god's sanctuary. I am afraid I will never be able to repay you." "I do not believe that," Han Sen frowned. Han Sen had never of an attack such as the one he spoke of. He did not know because he had not practiced the falsified sky sutra. Luoyin said nothing more and instead tried to attack again. This time, Han Sen stared at his curious opponent with absolute focus. He was going to give it his all and dodge the strike that was to come, but it was useless. The attack hit his neck. Luoyin did this another 13 times until he collapsed and sat on the ground. His wounds were cracked once more, and blood oozed from the orifices. The 13 hits were all delivered to different parts of Han Sen's body. He tried dodging and blocking each time, but despite his most valiant efforts, he failed to avoid the hits. If he wasn't wearing his Devil Ant King armor, he'd have been dismembered 13 times. No matter how much he tried, Han Sen could not block the attacks. Each of Luo Yin's strikes were sent and received exactly where he desired them to be. No matter how hard Han Sen tried, he could not dodge them. No wonder Mom said, "When I meet someone who has fully learned the true falsified sky sutra, I should not dodge or try to defend." Killing such a foe quickly would be the only route to victory. It really is quite the terrifying skill. Han Sen's heart was rocked with surprise. He couldn't even see where Luoyin attacked from, so it was no wonder why this skill of the Luo family was considered legendary. I cannot kill you. You should go. If you need me to kill someone on your behalf someday, call me anytime. This is getting annoying." Luoyin sighed. Han Sen looked at Luoyin and did not say anything. He turned and left. Although he knew Luoyin could not beat him, the falsified sky sutra's power made Han Sen feel danger unlike ever before. For now, Luoyin could not break his armor, but what if someday someone could? What if he went up against a foe possessing a weapon that could perform the strike as needed? Han Sen lacked confidence in his ability to stay alive against the falsified sky sutra because they could not miss. If they attacked, it would all be over. What is falsified sky sutra, exactly? Han Sen did not believe an unbreakable skill existed in this world. Everything had its weakness, and Han Sen only had to find it. In fact, Han Sen had used his Dongxian aura to scan Luo Yin's moves when they fought. He couldn't track the skill's delivery, but he did uncover something. Although Han Sen was unable to trace the path of the falsified sky power, it was cast by a human. That meant Han Sen could tell exactly when Luo Yin cast the move. With this knowledge, Han Sen should be able to fight in a way that would prevent his opponent from casting any falsified sky powers. No matter how powerful a skill was, it was pointless if it could not be used. But this was just a thought. He couldn't blindly go against something like that and expect things to turn out exactly as he envisioned. He knew he'd have to deliberate it more and work out exactly how he might break down those attacks. Han Sen was not an old-fashioned man. He had doubts, so he didn't venture to the Emerald Lake as planned. Instead, he returned to a human shelter so he could go back to the Alliance. Upon his return, he wanted to research and learn as much as he could about the falsified Sky Sutra. He didn't plan on learning it, but Han Sen would definitely value a way in which he might break it if it was ever used against him again. The Luo family would never expect the falsified Sky Sutra they gave Han Sen to go unlearned, and he would instead use it to reverse engineer a counter to the very thing they desired him to know. After glossing over a bunch of information, Han Sen stumbled onto something rather elucidating. The power is of the sky, but not. It is Shura. Power is drawn from blackened hearts. After reading this sentence, Han Sen sort of understood what it meant. The falsified sky power was derived from the Shura, obtained through the consequence of evil actions. You cannot avoid karma. Once you strike, it is locked on and unavoidable. If it really was karma, then no one could avoid it. But this falsified Sky Sutra was created by humans. The karma they created was just a power built by the hands of humans. After Han Sen saw this, his mood began to ease. The power of humans could always be exhausted. They could not go on forever. So, the falsified Sky Sutra that never missed had to suffer from the same human defect. If things are like this, then the Dongxian Sutra should be a falsified Sky Sutra buster. Dongxian is all about seeing opportunities. You can observe people, the sky and ground. You can see through everything in this world. My Dongxian aura should be able to trace the coming of falsified sky power. So, why am I unable to? Han Sen had yet to come up with a solution to this puzzle. Han Sen brought out his Dongxian Sutra and gave it a read. There was still much content he did not understand. The lexicon of its writing was too ancient and old. It had been a long time since he last tried reading it, but now here he was again with it. He compared it with the falsified Sky Sutra, for his knowledge of the Dongxian Sutra had greatly expanded by now. So, Dongxian Sutra can restrict falsified Sky Sutra? My Dongxian aura should be able to see and predict the path falsified sky powers take. But it looks like I lost my way when learning the Dongxian Sutra, and I focused too much on observing energies. Energy is only one component of everything in this world, after all. Han Sen felt as if he was learning more, the more he read. And the more he read, the more he realized just how incredible the Dongxian Sutra really was. The contents would undoubtedly shock the world and bring God himself to tears. Still, there were many things he was unable to learn to completion. It shouldn't be too difficult to break the falsified sky power. I need to sense destiny and predict karma. Then, it all boils down to which combatant is more powerful. Han Sen closed his Dongxian Sutra with a far greater understanding. Han Sen didn't choose to immediately change his Dongxian aura. He started to review Jade Skin, which he had learned before it. After unlocking his first gene lock with Jade Skin, his eighth sense was what would enable him to restrict the falsified sky power the most. If he mastered his eighth sense, with the power of space and time, and his supersensibility, he wagered he could catch the falsified sky power's trace. But Han Sen was already used to Dongxian aura, which was similar enough. He rarely made use of his eighth sense, as it was. But now that he had read the Dongxian Sutra again, he had learnt something new. He thought the Dongxian aura could include the eighth sense. So, he took a look at its specifics again, and got to thinking of a way he could incorporate it directly into Dongxian aura. And if he could not do that, he'd at least want to find a way in which he could use both simultaneously. But the Dongxian Sutra was the real and complete one. He had just been too focused on energy patterns and flows before. He had obtained many advantages from that, yes, but it resulted in him losing the true meaning behind Dongxian aura. Han Sen did not go back to the sanctuary for a while. He remained where he was, practicing the Dongxian Sutra and Jade Skin, hoping for a breakthrough. He thought the Luo family's business was too complicated. Even though his mom tried her hardest to get away from them, they'd always crop up in an unexpected manner. Han Sen began to think he might not be able to completely escape them either. If there was some conflict with the Luo family in the future, this would be his best shot of coming out on top. If he didn't learn how to overcome the falsified Sky Sutra, even if he learned it himself, he would be unable to compete with the Luo family. The Dongxian Sutra, which could predict and foresee every opportunity, was his best chance of staying alive if he ever had to do combat with someone with a high tier of the falsified Sky Sutra. Therefore, Han Sen got to practicing seriously once more. Unfortunately for him, however, progress was excruciatingly slow. So, Han Sen decided to visit the virtual training camp so he could do battle with real people. He would learn much faster through actual combat. Qin Xian visited the virtual training camp whenever she could, too. She always did so in the hopes of meeting up with a little soldier on the battleship for some guidance. But it had been a long time since she last saw him, and this severely disappointed her. So, on this day, she entered the virtual training camp and went straight to her friend list like usual. Much to her surprise, she saw a little soldier on the battleship was online. "Coach, are you free?" Qin Xian quickly sent a message and invited him to her lobby. Han Sen saw Ms. Perfume's invitation arrive and agreed to join. He knew Ms. Perfume was Qin Xian, but Qin Xian didn't know Han Sen was a little soldier on the battleship. Therefore, he exercised much caution in not allowing her to see who he truly was. Qin Xian was quite powerful among evolvers, but because of Han Sen's fitness, she was far weaker than him now. But not everything came down to fitness. The hyper-geno arts and combat skills she possessed would do well for his practice. That was why he agreed to join her. "Use all you can to beat me," Han Sen said to Qin Xian after entering the arena. Qin Xian was happy to hear this, and even happier to oblige. She thought the reason why he said this was so he could test her power and correct any mistakes she made. To have such a powerful elite practice with her was a brilliant thing.